Okay. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, June 17th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. May we have the roll call, please?
Supervisor Groom.
Present.
Supervisor Horsley.
Here.
Supervisor Slocum. Supervisor Tissier.
Here.
President Pine.
Here. So we will begin with public comment. This is a time where members of the public can speak on items that are not on the agenda or are listed on the consent agenda or are part of the county manager's report or board member reports. So members of the public will have up to 2 minutes. And since these aren't agendized, we can't get into a discussion about the items. To begin, I'd like to recognize Judge Foils, who I think may have some comments on a budget item and won't be available later in the day. So if Judge Foils, you'd like to take a couple minutes now, that'd be terrific.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Mr. President and board members. Thank you so much for hearing me. I'm Judge Robert Foils. I'm the presiding judge of San Mateo County Superior Court. You all know me, I'm sure, and I want to thank the board for its support of our court. As you know, our court has been severely impacted over the last 6 years with the state budget crisis. We have shuttered the San Mateo branch court. We have all but shuttered the northern court, leaving only 2 judges up there. We have lost 130 of our employees, which is more than 34% of our workforce. And last year, I had the sad duty of laying off 3 commissioners, as well as leaving a 4th commissioner slot vacant, leaving only 3 commissioners to serve our courts. The concern of that has been the ability for our court to service the public, and particularly our ability to service such wonderful programs as our collaborative courts. Our collaborative courts are the Bridges Drug Treatment Program, the Pathways Mental Health Court, the newly created or relatively newly created Veterans Court, which has been fantastically successful, our Domestic Violence Court, and our Drug Court. And the need for us to maintain essential services has impacted our ability to service those collaborative courts. And I am appreciative of the fact that the board will consider today a budget item or a consent item, I'm not sure where this fits on the agenda, to allow the court, to fund the court in effect, to hire an agile workforce position commissioner. It'd be a term commissioner for a period not to exceed 3 years on an agile workforce contract, which we have begun, just like the county, to utilize. This would be a position without a pension benefit, but instead just a deferred compensation plan, very much like the same as used in the county. And this would then allow us to continue to serve the collaborative courts that we so desperately wish to serve while continuing to meet our most essential services. So in effect, we would go from 3 regular commissioned commissioners and add 1 agile workforce position as a commissioner, and that in turn will allow us to maintain service without further cuts to our collaborative courts. And I want to thank you in advance for your help and your continued collaboration with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Foils. We always appreciate the opportunity to work collaboratively with the court system.
And if it's okay, I'm going to go back upstairs. I have a full courtroom of people, and then I'll come back, and if there's any questions, John Fitton's here, and I'll be back as soon as I can clear that courtroom. All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right, we have 4 other speakers in public comment. Marty Fox.
Good morning, President Pine, members of the board, my fellow veterans, Supervisor Slocum and Mr. Boppy, and County Counsel Mr. Byers. Thank you for your service to the county, including your service to those residents with serious mental illness who are insight deficient and cannot advocate for the services that would restore their freedom to associate with their families, because they are living on the streets, hospitalized, incarcerated, or dead, like Lanira Serrano Garcia, Errol Chang, and Edgar Aristando. Laura's Law, assisted outpatient treatment produces positive outcomes and is based on admissible scientific evidence of those positive outcomes, which was examined by the U.S. Department of Justice before it certified AOT as an effective, economical, and humane hospitalization and incarceration recidivism reduction program in March of 2012. And that is a fact. Laura's Law is a needs-based solution for families of persons living with untreated mental illness who are residing with them, as well as our law enforcement officers. It provides treatment before the crisis that leads to the tragedy of Yanira's death in Half Moon Bay 2 weeks ago and Errol's death in Pacifica on March 18th in front of their friends and families. Those tragedies will be repeated again and again as long as the health system gets to sacrifice innocent people to the intellectually and morally bankrupt Lanterman-Petrus-Short Act and HIPAA gods. And the brutality of the streets is used to modify the behavior of persons who are least able to defend themselves because they resist the treatment they need. Persons living with mental illness who are insight deficient need the incentive Laura's Law provides to help them truly recover because it provides access to treatment based on their need, not the threat their serious mental illness presents. Please vote to implement Laura's Law. It is time to say, not one more Yanira, not one more Errol, not one more law enforcement officer. Thank you.
Roger Medler is next.
Good morning. I have been told that I go to this city. I have done that. I go to the county, and then I go to the state. I feel like I have been caught up in a conspiracy, and my constitutional rights have been violated. I would like to personally thank Mr. Stephen Wagstaff for not pressing any charges against me for something I did not do or did not say. Thank you very much. And I would like to have Mary Ann Neihart of Pacifica and Karen Irving investigated under the ordinance of 204-030 ORD 4430. And I've been to the district attorney in 2005, 2006, and 10. Nothing has come of my issue. And now I have a letter to the city attorney or city manager of Miss Lori Tinful, mentioned that all conditions of this person in question has met all the certificate of occupancy, and this is not true. This is a lie. I have filled out complaints of corruption to her, not only the certificate of occupancy. You all have a copy of the documents of not being true. If you have noticed on the documents in the violations, it says there are responsive documents to this request, and that means, this actually means no, there is not no responsive documents to the request. And it should actually say there's no responsive documents. Anyway, Teresa Dyer and I have met with the city manager, planning department, and George White, and the police chief. Why he was there, I don't know. He's not with the planning department. And they suggest that we go to conflict resolution, which I have done that. That resolved in nothing. And they just tried to shut me up. And why, that's about it. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay. Unless county council would advise us otherwise, I don't believe there's anything the county can do for Mr. Medler, despite many conversations.
Oh, that's correct. And we have had numerous email exchanges and conversations with Mr. Medler, trying to, get to the bottom of his concerns and try to sort it all out. And we've concluded that there really is a City of Pacifica matter. I mean, it's falls squarely within kind of the city's police power, land use regulation power, and so it's kind of where we are, and we let Mr. Medler know that in a fairly lengthy piece of written correspondence. So.
Okay, thank you. Therese Dyer.
Good morning, County Supervisors. I have another piece of evidence for each of you to look at regarding the lawyer that told them not to give me my spouse's support, which I never received any spouse's support. He's the same lawyer that threatened a judge. Now, if she didn't sign the judgment, which she didn't do for 6 months, is that a crime if you threaten a judge? Well, I'd like Mr. Beers to answer that one, because I'm reading his response to my letter in November 14th. And under that, he says, Finally, your third and fifth requests appear to seek determinations regarding specific legal issues, prosecutorial discretion, and the definition application of particular crimes. The officer cannot provide you legal advice. Please let me know if I have misinterpreted these requests. I most assuredly that you did misrepresent them, because you have that ordinance that requires an investigation of elected officials. Now, what I want you to do, because I went through every avenue possible, I want you to resurrect that ordinance, because you never used it. This is the first time you can use it. And I want you to ask Mr. Horsley, Mr. Slocum, because they both had a part in this, and maybe Mr. Maltby too, because he's the one that I put the claim in that I was told to do by the Sheriff's Department. So quit giving me the runaround. I have a clipping here of a judge. I don't know if he's still here, but he should be, because it says lawyer gets house arrest for theft charge. That's the same thing that happened to me, only I was shipped out of $500,000, and this woman was only gypped out of a few $1,000s. So please resurrect your ordinance and do what's right for the people.
Okay. And also, Mr. Byers, have you had a chance to meet with Ms. Stiers? I can't recall.
No, I have not. I mean, by virtue of my position, my name technically appears on all the correspondence that leaves my office. But rarely am I the author. There may be a piece of correspondence that was sent from one of my deputies to Ms. Dyer. I know we had the board asked us to look at her concerns several months ago, and I know we followed up and did that. So I know there has been some correspondence. That's all I know.
All right, thank you. And our final speaker today is Mr. Perry Peterson.
Good morning, President Pine and the board. I'm one of the organizers of a group called Save Junipero Serra Park. I've been a neighbor of Junipero Serra Park for over 35 years. I'm a member of the Sequoia Audubon Society, and I walk with a group of walkers throughout the park several times a week, so I'm very familiar with it. The reason I'm here, I bring a petition to you that opposes any disc golf in Junipero Serra Park. There is none now. A developer has proposed disc golf for Junipero Serra Park. And this is presented now because at the Park Commission's June 5th meeting, they said that, well, they passed a motion to consider disc golf, and it was indicated that a budget would be voted at the June 17th meeting of the Board of Supervisors. I now understand from talking to staff that there is no vote on this, and possibly it may come up in 2015. A staff report for the Parks Commission meeting of June 5th said that disc golf may be considered for the Quarry Park or Mirada Surf Park. At the June 5th meeting, the developer presented a proposal for disc golf at Junipero Serra Park. The commission then voted for a budget to study that proposal, ignoring the staff report. The Staff and Parks Commission seemed concerned about increasing visitors to the park, Junipero Serra Park. They did not talk about a plan to do that. A simple low-cost plan could be a ranger visiting nearby schools, churches, and service groups to present Junipero Serra Park, its facilities of barbecues, picnicking, and children's playground, and natural plants and animals. This has not been done. So this petition asks the county to limit the increased intensity of recreation posed by disc golf, which is not unlike a sport of baseball or regular golf. It's sort of violent, and the park is a quiet place.
Thanks for your comments. We'll have to wrap up now because the 2 minutes is
good.
gone. We did receive your petition. You and I are scheduled to get together to talk about this. And in addition, you are correct that in that there's no recommended budget action in the 14-15 year. what the parks is thinking of doing is looking at a plan for the entire a master plan for the park system in 15-17. So there's no current action in front of the board, but I look forward to talking with you about it further.
Thank you, I appreciate your attention.
Okay, that concludes our public comment. We'll now move to set the agenda. I'd like to note that item 27 concerning the setting of sewer rates in Burlingame Hills and Crystal Springs has been removed from this agenda and will be considered at our July 15th meeting. Are there any other items that folks would like to remove from the consent agenda? Or we can have a motion to approve this.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item number 27, which will be put over, and the regular agenda as well.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we do have one award today, or one presentation. Mr. Malpe.
Mr. President, members of the board, before we begin our budget presentations today, I wanted to recognize our budget director, Jim Sacco, and his outstanding staff for receiving the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the county's two-year budget for fiscal years 13 through 15. This award is presented annually by the Government Finance Officers Association. The budgets for these 2 years reflect both the guidelines established by the National Advisory Council on State and Local Budgeting and GFOA's best practices in budgeting. Award recipients have pioneered efforts to improve the quality of budgeting and are excellent examples for other governments. In order to receive this award, the budget must meet the following guidelines. It has to be a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. The budget document must be rated proficient in all 4 categories to receive the award. San Mateo is one of only 8 counties in California that share this achievement. Although the county has been recognized for this award in prior years, this year was especially special because of our transition to a 2-year budget with greater emphasis on performance. So today we want to thank Jim, Heather, Daniel, Swati, Jessica, and Mary Claire, and congratulate them on this fantastic achievement. We also wanted to thank Michael Bolander, Garrett Dunwoody, and Shanna Collins for their participation in this. We have some certificates of recognition, Mr. President, and if you come up, we could present these. Jim Sacco.
I think he's telling me.
His pocket is also closer to that. Heather Ledesma. Jessica Silverberg. Swati Deshpande. And last but not least, Mary Claire Katz.
Thank you to our budget department. It is no small task keeping track of $2.1 billion, that's for sure. We're now going to move, well, first just a note that at 1:30 we will have our presentation of service awards. But now we're moved to a series of directors' reports. So this is something new for the county. As everyone is aware, we adopted a 2-year budget. While we'll be making some adjustments to the budget for 14-15 later in this meeting, with the 2-year budget, we now have the opportunity to spend more time on reports and performance metrics. So today will be the chance to see how that work is progressing and we're really looking forward to seeing the report. So our first report is the health system with Gene Frazier.
Mr. President, members of the board, as Gene's coming forward, let me just add to your remarks, Mr. President, that this morning will be the first of a series of reports that you will be receiving from department heads between now and September. And they will give you an update on the two-year performance goals, a preview of their preliminary priorities for the next 2 years, and highlight their department mission and key measures. We certainly welcome your questions during these presentations and your feedback as we continue to work on and improve our performance measurements throughout the county. I want to thank all the department heads and their staff for making significant improvements to performance measures this year and for laying the groundwork for more informed, data-driven decision-making in the future. Gene.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here to do the health system performance report. And so, of course, let's start first with the health system's mission. It's a very straightforward, but actually a hard one to accomplish. We help San Mateo County residents live longer and better lives. So when we look at that, of course, the very first measure we would want to look at is actually how long are San Mateo County residents living. The great news is that, in fact, San Mateo County residents are doing well on this measure. The life expectancy of 84 years compares very favorably with the life expectancy in the United States of 79 years and with California's life expectancy of 81. But we want to dig a little deeper than this. In the health arena, we always want to look at who in particular is not doing as well, because that's, of course, where we want to target our resources. So what this chart shows you is life expectancy in the county by race ethnicity. And what we want to particularly focus on is that this chart shows us the effects of the chronic stress that certain subpopulations experience when they live in marginalized communities without great social mobility. And it's really by looking very carefully at the data underlying the life expectancy that we identify where not just the health system, but as I said, the entire county should be targeting our resources. So this indicator is what we call a lagging indicator. What it means is it's showing us the effects of decisions that we have already made. So the second indicator that we look at in health is what we call a leading indicator, which tells us what we think will happen in the future. This indicator, and I'm sorry that the way this chart shows or is presented doesn't highlight it as clearly as it should, but this is a very depressing indicator indeed. Only 1 out of every 3 seventh graders in San Mateo County now meets national fitness standards. Worse yet, the trend is negative, and actually quite strongly so. In just the last 5 years alone, we have decreased by 15% on this measure. So, of course, this as a leading indicator bodes very ill for the future of both San Mateo County and of American society in general. The health system or the healthcare world in general cannot reverse this trend, and certainly not on our own. The way we're going to reverse this trend is by collective action, and particularly collective policy action on all levels. To change this trend, we're going to need to compete much harder with technology to get our kids outside and onto the playgrounds and into our parks. We're going to need to work much harder than ever to make it easy to get exercise just by walking to school or riding your bike to the store. The good news is that both our youngest generation and our oldest generation actually want these kinds of changes in our communities. They want to be able to live in walkable, bikeable, socially engaging places. But what it really means, if we're going to reverse this trend, is that we're going to have to rethink our old assumptions, and in particular, we're going to have to plan based not on what has happened in the past or even on the behaviors of the present, but on what we want to have happen in the future. A future where we reverse this trend and 2/3 of our 7th graders are meeting physical fitness standards, and our seniors are living in communities where they remain active and engaged even when they can no longer drive. So there are going to be decisions coming up by policymakers throughout the county, decisions by San Mateo cities on how much density, both commercial and residential, is allowed along transit corridors, decisions here by your board about how to allocate space on Middlefield road. All of these are decisions that I think this kind of a trend shows us have far broader policy implications for the future of the county than we might expect. So turning,
Jean, if I might ask, what's the national percent of fitness? If we're 35, are we in line nationally, or?
I actually don't know that off the top of my head. I do know that the trend is downward for the entire United States, and I believe we are in line.
Okay, thank you.
More generally. So turning now to the big change that happened this year for the health system, it is, of course, the Affordable Care Act and the expansion of coverage that started on January 1st. In partnership with HSA, with community agencies, and with insurance brokers, we all worked very hard to make this enrollment period, which is the first one for Covered California, a success. And as you can see by the numbers, it was actually a great success. We significantly exceeded what our target was. I want to thank you for recognizing all those who worked so very hard to make this happen at your last board meeting. And I also want to report some very good news that we got just a couple of days ago in a report from Covered California. The health system, led by our own inimitable, unbelievably amazing Shrija Srinivasan, was the #1 government enrollment entity in the entire state of California.
Wow.
So the Affordable Care Act not only created...
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
On the target for 2014-15, does that mean is that a representative of new people signing up?
That's a great question. The answer is it is not cumulative. We wish we could add those together. What we expect to see is slow growth over the next couple of years as people get more used to it. But remember, everybody who enrolled this year has to re-enroll. Yeah, every year we're going to have to take those extra people and get them enrolled again and then try to get more people. So it's actually ongoing huge bolus of work.
So they're not new people, they're just
correct. For the 14-15 target, our goal is to see people will move in and out, but our goal is to have a minimum of this number continue to enroll and maybe increase a little.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So looking at Medi-Cal expansion, which also occurred on January 1st, we had enormous success here. Our original target was 10,000 people, new enrollees in Medi-Cal. And as you can see through this chart, in fact, by May 1st, we had 16,000 people enrolled, which honestly exceeded our estimates of how many total people were eligible, which means our estimates were wrong. But I'm also pleased to report that this chart is out of date. So by June 1st, this chart was done in May, by June 1st, an additional 2,000 people had enrolled in Medi-Cal. So we are at 180% of our original target. You will see again that for next year, our goal is to keep all these people enrolled. We just don't believe there are that many more people who are eligible for Medi-Cal within San Mateo County.
Supervisor Crew has a question.
Do we have a count of the uninsured remaining in our county now?
Shrija, help me on this one.
Our estimate is that there remain around 36,000 uninsured. That data is 2 years lag, so it'll catch up.
Thank you.
All right, excuse me. Turning now to health system specific performance measures, and in particular in light of recent local tragedies, we wanted to look closely at 2 measures that relate to mental health services. So this first measure represents the percentage of calls for help to 911 that would have been appropriate for a smart paramedic response that actually got the response. And you will see our estimate is a little lower than we had hoped for this year. That's because the second SMART team, which you've invested in and AMR has invested in, came on a little later than we expected. But the good news is that with the additional team being available for an entire year next year, we expect the percentage of calls responded to by a SMART paramedic team to go up. I also, at this point, want to very much thank Mike Callaghy for reaching out to us at the health system to investigate how we can work with local police departments to support them when they respond to people having mental health crises. As someone who used to represent police officers, I know that these kinds of calls are nerve-wracking for the police officers and, of course, for the families. And we are looking at what other cities and communities do to provide support support to police in those circumstances so that we can avoid these kinds of tragedies, which are tragic not just for the individuals involved, but of course for the police officers themselves. The second measure in mental health that we wanted to look at is how well our full-service partnerships are serving the youth who are enrolled in them. And just as a reminder, full-service partnerships are very intensive programs. We call them wraparound. They're truly 24/7. They're all run by community-based organizations who are very great partners with us in this work, and they only enroll the most seriously challenging youth and adults with behavioral health problems. So the good news here is that we are remaining steady, that 2/3 of the youth who are enrolled in our full-service partnerships have fewer psychiatric hospital days as a result of their enrollment. We look at this because going into a hospital when you're youth means you've had essentially a real crisis. And so what we are working on in the full-service partnerships is to help these youth recover and really become stabilized. And because these are just bar graphs and don't really give us a sense of the reality, both of how challenging some of these youth are and how hard these full-service partnerships work, I thought if you would indulge me, I would tell you a very brief client story relating to one of our youth who is enrolled in a full-service partnership. So at 9 years old, PJ had a long history of behavioral health problems. Her behavior was extremely volatile and often resulted in verbal and physically abusive outbursts that were so serious that her family called the police. So the police were out at her home quite frequently. In the 2.5 months before we enrolled her in the Edgewood full-service partnership, she had 12 hospitalizations, some with stays over 2 weeks long. So once this girl was enrolled in Edgewood, Edgewood's first priority was to stabilize the situation. And they worked very hard to create an intensive safety support plan, and they even reached out to the local police to sit down and talk with them about how they might respond when they got called out to the home, because for obvious reasons, Edgewood and the family were very worried about that. In the first 6 weeks of services, PJ still had 6 visits to the psych emergency service, and she still spent some time in Edgewood's hospital diversion program. But as she and the family became more engaged in services, these stopped. In fact, Edgewood provided intensive therapy and supports, including after-school supports and therapy for the family to understand how to cope with PJ. Through these very extensive services, what both PJ and her family came to understand was her very deep and profound anxiety that was driving her anger and her aggression. And with the support of her family and the team, PJ actually developed her talents in art and music, which actually in turn then gave her coping skills to actually manage her underlying anxiety. PJ engaged in a full-service partnership treatment for 2 years. She did not return to the hospital, and she was able to make so much progress that she successfully graduated. I'm very pleased to report that PJ is now doing very well in the community. So this is a testament to these full-service partnerships and the intensive services and why early intervention with families and children can really change the trajectory of an entire family's life. So as you know, we have embraced LEAN, which we have branded as LEAP in the health system, and that's our way of tackling some of our very hardest problems. And this slide is an example of using LEAP to tackle one of the ones that was one of the hardest for us, which was the long wait list we had for patients who needed primary care appointments at the medical center. So the staff embraced the LEAN techniques of looking at our work, developing standard work, and then applying it. And as you can see, the wait list went down. Once again, this chart is out of date. I'm very pleased to report that the waiting list has now been eliminated. And we will be having celebrations in July. Kudos to all of the staff who worked so very hard to get these great results. Another example of our success with LEAP is the dramatic reduction shown in this chart in how long it takes for us to get an IHSS provider to a family, in particular to an individual who needs the in-home support services. Honestly, this technique first allowed us to really get a handle and understand how long the wait in fact was, and then to develop the best practices we could, create standard work, and implement them. I'm very proud of the hard work of Aging and Adult in embracing the LEAP techniques, and because of their success, we're continuing to spread LEAP to other divisions within the health system. Okay, so here's our one slide budget summary. As you can see, we have about a 10% increase in net county cost in year 2. This is driven primarily by 2 things. First, salary and benefit increases, of course, due to the MOUs, and 3% COLA for CBOs, for which we're very grateful and which we really appreciate your support on. You'll note we're adding just 8 positions. We've really focused on doing add deletes to make our workforce match the needs of our residents. I also want to say that we very much appreciate the ability to use agile positions, as we do have time-limited work that is appropriate for time-limited staffing. All right, so turning now to our activities for our 2 fiscal years, the health system has 5 main priority areas, which I'll go over. The first one, of course, continues to be making the healthy choice the easiest choice, and that way we can keep people leading healthy lives that keep them out of the doctor's office and hospital. We do this primarily through policy change. That's the way we'll be able to make population-sized changes. And so we work hard to influence policymakers and to make clear the health implications of some policy choices. This is an example of a public education campaign that I know you're aware of, that we worked on in the northern part of the county. The research relating to the consumption of sugar in liquid form just gets stronger and stronger on how pernicious it is and how close a connection it has to the epidemic of diabetes that we have. So we did this public education campaign. We have been working with our state legislators to support a warning label on sugary beverages, because of course people really don't know this science. And I wanted to thank our legislative delegation for their support on this. Again, and next year we will continue our work both on reducing soda consumption and on policy changes and improving the food system generally.
Gene, that bill is going to the governor, right?
I have not heard today. I think is the day it's being heard in the Assembly. So thank you for all your support on it. Of course, you know that we're continuing to work on active transportation. If we can build exercise into our days without people noticing and not adding more time, we will naturally make people both healthier and happier, because there are great mental health benefits from exercise as well. And of course, we get the synergistic effects of reducing climate change, which literally threatens to swamp all our other efforts, and reducing traffic. This year, we sponsored a training, First Community in California, to sponsor this training by a national organization. It was all about innovative street designs that make it actually fun and inviting and safe for people of all ages to get around in ways other than by using a car. 2 interesting facts. One, as I said, it actually helps to reduce traffic. But the second thing is that these kinds of streets, interestingly enough, actually increase the economic activity of local businesses. Because when you get people moving by foot in particular, frankly, they stop and they shop. So lots of people were interested. In the next year, we'll be providing technical assistance to actually help cities implement some of these designs here in San Mateo County. Goal number 2 is, of course, all about our care delivery system. We're going to continue to refine how we practice so we provide the right care at the right place and at the right time. We show this picture of the mobile van because, of course, one of those efforts is to have a mobile van out on the coast. I want to report that we have not made as much progress as we would like. It turns out it's pretty hard to drive vans like this on the South Coast, so we couldn't buy a van off the shelf. We've had to work very closely with Puente to try to essentially design a custom van. So we're now hoping to have that van operational in 2015. Areas where we've made faster progress is the results of your investment, your Measure A investment in treatment, particularly early identification and treatment of mental health issues, especially in the schools where we really have a stronger and tighter bond than we've ever had. And I can't express to you how grateful we are, both for your financial but also support, but for your effort to bring us closer together. Really great results there. Cal MediConnect. Yay! I actually remember being here last year and saying I was not going to promise it was going to happen this year because in fiscal year 13-14 because we'd promised so many years, and then it did. So on April 1st, the Health Plan of San Mateo went live with their Care Advantage Cal MediConnect program. We are working very closely, particularly aging and adult services, but also behavioral health and the medical center, working very closely with the health plan. We need to identify those elderly folks who are most at risk of having to leave their homes and move into a nursing home or some other institution. And then we're going to provide the behavioral, the medical, and the social support that they need to remain safely at home. So this is really, really exciting. More to come in the next year. Our third goal is all about health IT. There's so much promise in health IT, but honestly, as an industry, healthcare lags far behind most other industries in its adoption of technology. So for us, our first priority, after getting our computers upgraded, will be to match the information in our various electronic health records so that we can see one patient's information across all of our various services. And then we need to deliver that complete clinical information to the providers when and where they need it. After that, we're going to be aggregating our data and starting to mine it because we want to use that information the way other industries do to provide our services better and faster. And in particular, we want to make sure that we're targeting it in the areas and to the people who most need our support. So the fifth goal, we are continuing to expand our use of LEAP. Here's our new branding. Hope you like the sense of leaping forward. The beauty of LEAP is that it's really deeply rooted in the conviction that the people who know how to solve problems are the ones who experience them every day, our line staff. And so it's a very structured process to get the creativity from our line staff in ways that we can solve our problems. We've now spread LEAP, as I said, to 4 divisions. Literally at this minute, the spread is happening in public health policy and planning. They're working right now using diagrams like this, which we call the spaghetti diagram, in our public health lab to look at unnecessary motion and ways we can improve services within our public health lab. This is literally following one person around as they do a task. It's a way of kind of making visual unnecessary motion that we might not otherwise actually notice. So our results obviously are very exciting to us, but they're getting us some notice externally. The California Healthcare Foundation has invested in us. We are the only public health system in California they are investing in to make the next leap in our LEAP evolution. They've invested $100,000 in us to create an ongoing LEAP leadership system that will really complement and support the event-based improvement work. So more on that in the next year. And our last goal is, of course, to make the health system a great place to work. This is not just good for us. And by the way, we're really sad that Dean and the bag monster, I don't know if you can, is that on your left or right? Is no longer here reading the newspaper with us. But we are in an era of really intense competition for staff members, particularly in the health arena, given our high cost of living. And frankly, the expansion of coverage means we really, there are lots of jobs for folks. So we have to do all that we can to both retain and to attract great people. So when we surveyed our staff, one of the things they talked about liking the least was their commute. And so we decided to give ourselves a dose of our own medicine, and we developed our Way to Go program where we help staff members try out other ways of commuting, walking, biking, public transit, carpooling, even if it's only a few days a week. We do this through offering individualized commute planning and, of course, events to get people excited about it. So our results, 17% reduction in people driving alone to work. That was in our first year. We will, of course, be continuing this program and expanding it to some of our other campuses in the next year. And another problem we face is that the good news is that we have lots of great staff. The bad news is some of them are deciding to retire, including and especially some of our managers. And so we have a very focused effort within the health system to groom future leaders, and I'm very pleased to introduce to you, at least via a photograph, the graduates of our very first Health System Leadership Academy, where we expose our rising stars to the concepts that they'll need to master if they want to become great leaders within the health system. It was a whole lot of fun doing this, and we have the next cohort starting in a couple of weeks. So here are all 5 priorities put together. They haven't changed from year 1 to year 2, and I would expect for our next 2-year budget they won't change enormously. These are kind of the areas where we're going to need to continue and sustain our efforts for the long run. So finally, before I end, I really want to thank each of you individually and all of you collectively, as well as the county manager, for all your support this year. You've provided financial, logistical, and moral support, which has made all the difference in our ability to accomplish everything that we did this year. It's been a great year, and I'm really proud of everything that we have done. I also want to thank each and every one of the health system staff members for making sure that the food we eat and the water we drink is safe, for working so hard to contain the many outbreaks of contagious diseases, some of which you've read about in the newspaper. It's been a very difficult year for our communicable disease unit in responding to all of these. For the many staff who've come up with new and innovative ways to inform policymakers about health implications of their decisions. For everyone who is constantly seeking ways to do what we do better. And for all those who care for the most vulnerable, and sometimes the most difficult, and sometimes even the most despised among us, with very deep compassion. It is every year, and this year in particular, a great privilege to represent the 2,100 dedicated, talented, and committed health system staff members before you today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Jean, for that very impressive presentation. So questions from the board?
I have one question. You talked about active transportation. You talked about helping cities and all. I had gotten a letter, and I forget who sent it to me, but it indicated that they were very pleased that we have someone in that position pushing active transportation, but they were getting actually some pushback from some of our agencies. Have you heard that or felt that?
I have not yet, and I would love to follow up with you.
Maybe we could talk after and I'll pull that letter. I was just concerned because we've gone to the effort. I want everyone to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because if some of the agencies aren't engaged, we won't make the strides we're hoping to do. So I would like to talk to you offline on that.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Orthley.
Just one comment is that I know actually one of your priorities, or it's probably number 6, is really replacing Cordilleras.
Ah, yes.
And I will, when we have board members' reports, I'll talk a little bit about what I saw when I went to Southern California, took a look at facilities in Ventura. Also want to thank your staff, especially Steve Kaplan and Terry Wilcox Ritkers and Mary M. Wallace. Met with me and some of the mayors of both Half Moon Bay as well as Pacific, talking about the services that are available and the full service partnerships, things that they were really not available or not really aware of their availability. It was really kind of an aftermath of the tragedies that both communities have suffered, and so we were working with them to make sure that the community knows that we are providing services, that these services are available. We need to make a better marketing outreach. But I think Steve and Terry and Mary M. did a fabulous job of representing the county, and I was very proud of the services that they provide.
Thank you.
And maybe if I could just make one more comment, sort of following up a little bit on what Dawn had said. I also want to thank your staff, including Steve and others, on the Beyond Newtown efforts that have been made with the schools. You mentioned that in here, and I think that's been huge this year, or actually it's been a little bit more than a year, at the efforts that have been made around the mental health in our schools and helping these youngsters. So I really want to congratulate your behavioral health division, because without them we couldn't have accomplish the tasks we have. So I really appreciate that. And also being on the hospital board, the lean efforts and I love your logo with the LEAP. That's great, a little gazelle-like. Reminds me of myself running around, yes. But anyway, I mean, when I see this presentation, it just shows how much has been done in 1 year. you know, and I know over time, you know, it takes time to do these things, but that's a huge undertaking that happened this year on all these fronts. So I want to thank you, Gene, for your great leadership and for your directors and all. You've done a terrific job.
Thank you.
I had a question, but we also have one speaker, Marty Fox, if Marty, you want to move up. So just, Gene, to follow up on Supervisor Tissier's question. So we hired the bike coordinator, which I guess we're calling I guess the title is active transportation coordinator or something of that kind. And she I guess, reports into CCAG. I mean, so
Correct.
Are you working, how much are you guys working with her on your goal of promoting pedestrian and bike?
Yes, we're doing everything we can to support her.
What's that?
We're doing everything we can to support her.
Okay, thank you. And on the LEAP, which is just tremendous, could you just remind me, like, where we've done the LEAP and where we're planning to go forward with it? You mentioned that
Yeah.
the next project is the health lab, and can you just refresh my memory as
Sure.
to where we've done it already?
Yeah, you bet. So it started in the medical center, and enormous kudos to Dr. Susan Ehrlich and Dr. CJ Konopoli, who really were the ones who embraced this and convinced Louise and me to embrace it. So they've been our real leaders. Medical center has done, I believe, 10 different initiatives. Is that right? Yeah, so 10 different what we call value streams, so areas of focus. So they're clearly the leader, and the medical center is where we will be initially implementing the LEAP management or leadership system.
Oh, okay.
So then the next division is behavioral health and recovery services that has one value stream, so one area of focus, which is the revenue cycle, but is, I would say, moving even faster because they've had such great results and they're seeing what is happening in the medical center. The next one was aging and adult services, which has one value stream as well. And both Steve and Lisa are actually coming going to Wisconsin to see one of the leaders in the lean movement within healthcare theta care. So they're continuing their education. And then just this week, we started in public health policy and planning.
Right. Yeah, there are so many impressive things that the department has done, but I will call out this tremendous effort with LEAP, because you constantly hear that government is inherently inefficient, that government can't do anything well, that everyone's bogged down, that but this shows that when everyone gets together and really looks in detail at how processes are done, they can be improved, significantly improved. Mm-hmm. So I know some of this is starting to move over into the rest of the county, and I don't think we can have enough this kind of work. So thank you for that. We do have Marty Fox who wants to make a comment.
Thank you again, President Pine, members of the board, and my fellow veterans for your service to the county. The title of the director's report for this agenda item is Healthy Residents and Prosperous Communities. Healthy residents are medically and mentally healthy. Untreated serious mental illness threatens those persons living with it, their family members, our community, and the law enforcement officers that protect our community. The president of one of the so-called advocacy groups recently admitted that our mental health system is in disarray. Admitting failure is the first step on the road to success. It should not be taken lightly. It's an opportunity. Take the second step and vote to implement Lohr's Law if you want to celebrate true success. Celebrating the success of voluntary treatment services is deeply hurtful to families like Yanira's and Errol's family, and all the families of persons living with mental illness who are insight deficient. Thank you.
Any further comments for Dean Frazier? Mr. Slocum?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick question. Could you just touch base on a couple of items regarding the operation of the North Faroes Clinic and what's the latest there, and patient loads and other concerns you may have?
CJ, do you have any particular comments? He's going to know more than I will.
So you want to come up to the mic? Thank you.
Fair Oaks Health Center is now completely up and running, fully operational. I think we've transitioned most of the patients who are going to come over from Menlo Park into the clinic. They're still working through some of the challenges of opening up an operation that big. Primarily, they're working on their phone systems, really also trying to welcome as many of those Menlo Park patients as possible into the new facility. We recently actually just had a LEAP event that was located at the Fair Oaks Health Center that was looking at improving mammogram rates. So they've actually embarked on performance improvement within the new center as well. I don't know if you have any other specific questions related to the clinic, but that's kind of where we stand at this point.
If I could just add, we obviously would really like to get the old building down. And have parking.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Any further questions?
Actually, I will also add, if you don't mind, one thing that CJ did not mention. In terms of that fifth goal, making the health system an attractive place, one of the things that was predicted and we are seeing, predicted with the Affordable Care Act, and we are having trouble recruiting doctors, primary care doctors. There's just intense competition. Everybody's expanding and the supply is not as large as we would like.
Okay, thank you again for your presentation and to all the staff for a great year. Our next presenter will be our district attorney, Steve Wagstaff.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers, Mr. Sacco. Good morning. As always, I am now very pleased to be here. I don't get to do what Jean Fraser does. I don't have a spaghetti chart. I don't have hers. I'm always envious of her, what she puts up there. It's really quite good, and that's why I always enjoy talking to her about it, because the district attorney's office is not just less than 5% the size of that department, but we also have a narrower function, and you've described that. But I'm also very proud of what that is, of what we do. See if I can make my annual, I don't have to ask like I always do every year. But I am honored to give you this report here today. The mission of the District Attorney's Office has remained unchanged probably since 1856 with some minor changes. And that is, our job is to do the prosecution of adult and juvenile offenders, enforce our consumer and environmental laws and civil process, provide legal investigative support for our agencies, and keep the public informed of what we're doing, as well as serving our victims on that. We're going to change this to put a greater emphasis on service of victims. That is my primary focus during the time that, whatever time I am the district attorney, will be to increase, as we have done, our victim services. Among our measures is our cost per case. You can see this is an interesting. If I skipped over one, you looked like I skipped one, Supervisor Horsley.
No, it was just you have all of a sudden your cost per case really jumps way up.
It does, and that's because in putting this chart together, on the left column for that, it is the number, the cost that we're dealing with per case in the year for it. And you can see it's actually only a $100 difference there that we're talking about, from the $1,420 up to the $150 up to the $1,500 area. And that's, so what is, it's actually a chart that goes from 0 up to 2,000. This is one tiny component of it. So that jump is really only $100 in that difference. It is not quite as big as it looks on that. But the reality, there are reasons for it. And that's a good question, I know, that you would want to know as to why in 11-12 did we have a high cost, and then in 12-13 it went down dramatically. And it really relates to some things that are generally outside our control. And that is, how many cases are we prosecuting? We don't have a quota. We don't have a, here is what we're taking for this year of the number of cases we'll prosecute. What our agencies bring to us every year is what we prosecute, review, and we prosecute. And what our funding is and what amount of revenue that we get will judge what that cost is then per case. And so, for instance, when we were dealing with 11-12 going into 12-13, our number of filings that year went up almost 500. Our filings of cases went up 500, whereas our cost and our revenue remained fairly flat. So indeed, when you have more cases, same amount of revenue, your cost per case is going to drop, that $100 a case. In our estimated, and I apologize for it says 1214, it's 1314. In that category, we're dealing with anticipated about the same number of filings. Our overall filing of cases from 1213 to 1314 has not gone up in terms of what law enforcement has provided us. Indeed, in something I'll mention to you, it's actually gone down in one area that I think you will find of interest. Additionally, our revenue provided to us has gone up. And that is, as Jean Fraser mentioned in one area where she was talking about the salary increases that were provided to the employees, the revenue that was coming in, as well as benefits and retirements. All of that cost and revenues went up, and that's why there is that difference that sits there. Looks enormous. It's actually not very enormous at that point. But when I talk about that in terms of our cost per case, our goal is always in the district attorney's office to make it the lowest that you'll find in the business. And certainly throughout the state of California, which is basically the only area that I have the ability to acquire information, we meet that goal by what we're doing. And we always try to keep our costs down. As Mr. Malpe and Mr. Sacco know so well, I am not, even though the economy has come back to some degree, I am not knocking on their door asking for dramatic increases, as is occurring with many of my compatriots around the state, because being trained by Keith Sorensen and Jim Fox, my predecessors, theirs was work with what you have. When you really need something, go beyond it. And that's why the philosophy that we work under. I try to make sure none of my employees hear me saying this over the air at any point, because I'm sure they would love to have more. I think in serving the community best, that's what I do in that area. We are also, in terms of a county comparison, and this is a chart that I think sums it up better than anything, in terms of how you compare us to our Bay Area counties. We review, and when it comes to cases reviewed, you can see that we have 23,000 cases, and this would be for the 12-13 year, almost 24,000 cases. We file 15,000 of them. There are approximately 6,000 to 7,000 cases that come to us from the police purely on a citation with a brief summary of the facts. We send those through the court commissioner. Those do not roll through the court on felonies and misdemeanors. Our goal in doing that was to cut down the work, cut down the appointments of counsel, cut down the cost. But I'm not including that in our filings, because once we review them, and each one of my prosecutors has to review these, we're not then spending time on it. So I could add that 6,000 to the number of cases filed. I'm not going to do that. It's a misnomer. 15,000 is the approximate number of cases that we prosecute a year on that line. I have 44 attorneys. 44 attorneys, and we base these statistics you have here on the California District Attorneys Association numbers. 44 attorneys who handle the day in and day out prosecution. That's a bit of a misnomer. I have a total of 56 lawyers. I have a couple of free lawyers working, but those numbers there do not include managers, do not include my 2 grant attorneys, and do not include my supervisors. I don't have an attorney in my office who does not do line work, not a single one of them. That includes me, and that's by choice. On Friday mornings, I go to those collaborative courts that Judge Foyles mentioned this morning, 2 of them that I particularly like, and that's the Pathways Mental Health Program and the Bridges Drug Treatment Program, because I think they're so spectacular. So every chance I get, I'm down there on Friday morning. That's true of every one of my prosecutors. They are in court. So in terms of the numbers, we're relying. But even with that, working on the numbers and do a comparison with what you see in the other counties. When you look at the filings per attorney, our filings are extremely high, way above the others. When it comes to the number of cases reviewed per attorney, we are way above. Now, what is not listed here, and I don't want in any sense mislead you, and that is the category that's not here, is the crime index. And that would be the number for the population, because we have a very low crime rate in this county, and I guarantee you that's why you don't have a district attorney who's coming into you and saying you need to dramatically increase our resources so we can deal with it. And that's a benefit, and that's a mark to the San Mateo County Sheriff, that's to all our police chiefs, that's to everybody in criminal justice who works hard to make sure that we are not, that we keep that low crime rate by the manner in which we prosecute our cases. But in terms of resources, what my staff is going through, and you hear me say this, I have a group of men and women on my staff that phenomenal in terms of their work ethic. I'll put them up against any other prosecutors. I'll put them up against any government agency anywhere. It's how hard they work. I don't go home at night. Last night, leaving fairly late, I had 2 prosecutors working on their trials in there. I come in the morning, by 6:30 to 7, that 3rd floor is humming with activity. And these are lawyers that aren't getting paid overtime. This is just simply their devotion to the work. And I can do nothing but compliment them for what they do. When you look at 2 counties that are often used as comparison for us on here, and that's Ventura and Contra Costa County, because you look at our filings of cases, they're fairly similar. And what you note is we have 44 attorneys, Contra Costa has 88, and Ventura 86, to do the same work. It's a tribute to, I think, the men and women who work for the district attorney's office in that
Steve,
line.
I have one question
Please.
on this. You mentioned the 6,000 citations are not included in the cases filed, if I understood correctly.
Yes.
Are those 6,000 in the 24,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the remainder, President Pine, would be of that approximately almost 3,000,
Right.
would be cases submitted to us by law enforcement that we decline to prosecute
I see.
because we determine that they're not, either the evidence is insufficient or they're not appropriately brought into the criminal justice system. So that would be that differential that you saw there on that line. And again, our number, and that's a tribute again to the Sheriff's Office and our police agencies, that the number of cases we decline to prosecute that are submitted to us varies between 10 and 15% per year. That will compare in Los Angeles and San Francisco County, where the decline to prosecute rate is close to 50 to 60% in those counties. And we have a very low one. That's a tribute to the quality of work that's done and the collaboration. Our law enforcement agencies are constantly calling us, asking for advice on what they can do in their cases. So I think in terms of this headline measure, I think it's one that you can be very proud, as I am, of the members of the District Attorney's Office. In our victim services, which again, as I said, is where my entire focus runs. It's where I really want to continue to improve. I have worked with the county manager. I have worked with the assistant county manager, Mike Callaghy, who's been very wonderful in helping us out to, again, any request I have, it's in being able to serve victims better, because I don't think we do enough. I would like to do more. I think we're doing a great deal. You can see in this customer evaluation of us, it's high, because I do have a group of men and women in my Victim Services Bureau who, again, are extremely compassionate, devoted people to help victims through a really horrible time in what they do. But that is an area where I want to continue to provide services to them, not in terms of finances. We do that through the state, but in terms of the ability to simply keep them apprised of what's going on, be with them when they go to court. There's a very serious, it's not a violent crime in the sense of somebody hurt, but we've got a case in trial right now that involves multiple burglaries, including 3 burglaries of homes out in the Woodside area where the people were at home at night. Even though I've spoken with several of those victims because they've been testifying, and it's making sure that they know, number one, that we get them restitution for their losses after my deputy DA is successful, as I believe she will be in this trial. She was one of those people who was there at past 8 o'clock last night working on her trial. And it is, but to make sure these people understand, I don't have to do that. I occasionally hear from somebody, I was a victim, and I never heard what happened to my case. I don't want our citizens to never know what happens. I think information is a very powerful force in making sure that they have faith in their government as to what's being done. So again, I think in terms of victim services, I think the team does a great job. There is room that we're going to continue to work to be even better. In terms of budget summary, it's fairly clear where we are. We remain, in terms of our funded employees, approximately the same. We continue to work toward volunteers to help us with it. We have, I believe this summer, 14 law students working for free, the benefit of getting some experience. We've got multiple college students, including the son of the sheriff of San Mateo County, who's helping us out this summer for free. And thank you very, yeah, somebody's paying, you're right, Sheriff. And we have high school students all up there helping us accomplish our function and getting the job done. No problem. In terms of our highlights in the past year, it is the Sunny Day operation that you all, I think, know about. I spoke to each of you about that. Our Chief of Inspectors, John Warren, who's been running my Bureau of Investigators now for the last 8 years, was in charge of that. It was a massive task with great help from the Sheriff's Office and our local agencies, and John was in charge of that. I don't understand why he doesn't have gray hair over all the work he had to do on that one. It was a wonderful work there. We are increasing our restitution determinations in order and working with the probation department. Our wonderful probation officer, Chief Keene, has organized a restitution unit. I won't steal his thunder. He may want to talk about that, but they're working with us because we knew that just a couple of years ago when we looked into how much restitution are we getting in our cases, it was less than 10%. And we can do better than that, and we're working on that. And very much working with the courts to get the orders, and then to try and get collection done on that so that our victims, it isn't just one of those, sorry, we can't do anything for you on that. And then, of course, elder abuse prosecution, that is a topic that I know I will be speaking to you about in the future. It is a matter of interest. It's a matter of growing concern. Previously, it was just an extra assignment for one of my trained prosecutors. It's now I've devoted a half of a position to that. I will want to do even more because I think it is one of those. We've been working with the county counsel's office. Has been wonderful to work with us on that, Amy Armsby. We've been working with the health department and adult and aging services to let them know, yeah, these are cases that can come to us. And my prosecutor, and I have an investigator working on that, they are out talking to the police. They were out at the Belmont Police Department at 7 o'clock this morning talking to the brass there and their investigators about here's what you need to do to take these cases that you might just say, go over to the health department and get them into our hands because there are abuses in that line. Those are things we are working on. Our priorities coming up, of course, is and I thank you so much for and the county manager for giving us the resources to get our case management system in. It's exciting. We've launched it. It's going to work. We hope to go live with it by end of September, October on that line. It's going to be the greatest change in the manner of prosecution. There is not another office in the state will be able to do what we're doing, even the ones, because we've explored all of them. It's phenomenal what we're doing. That we will be that last category there. We will be, I know that nobody's supposed to ever say paperless. It's a bad word. Nobody can ever go all the way. We're going to be as close to that as can be. Right now as we speak, they are installing on the 3rd floor for my staff up there the laptops on with their computers so that when they go to court, they're not lugging those. If you ever go to the 2nd floor, there's an armful of files. In the past, when they go to court, it's going to be taking that laptop with them and have access. It is going to be wonderful. As I mentioned, victim services, I do hope to continue to work on that along with the elder abuse. And our mortgage fraud investigations. We obtained a grant from the Attorney General's office through the state of California to work toward mortgage fraud investigations. That is in the process now of being organized. So we are taking steps forward to try and make sure that we deal with the things that are existent in our county so that we can have safe neighborhoods on that line. It has been, I want to extend my gratitude to all of you for the resources so we can do our job, because I do think you can be very proud of what my office does. I want to say thank you to Mr. Maltby and to Mr. Sacco and Heather Ledesma in particular, because figuring out the budget, working with somebody like me, is not easy. And trying to figure out, okay, how many times have I had to say to Heather and to Jim, one more time, please? Let's start at the top and explain that to me. Treat it like you're talking to that 3rd grader who doesn't understand. And that may be too high a grade level. And I appreciate their help in helping us get through the situation of what we do and how we handle the budget and make sure that we stay within our means, which we do, as we have done for at least through Mr. Sorensen's tenure, that's 1953 till now. We always stay within our means, and we rely on the hard work of the men and women of the District Attorney's Office, and you giving us the resources to do that is what's made that possible. And I so am grateful also to the collaboration that I get with Sheriff Monks and Chief Keene and the court, and John Fidden and our courts, Judge Foyles, because it's not like any other county. And that's the one thing in moving into this job as the district attorney, taking over for Mr. Fox, I've been able to see what goes on in other counties. And it's not even close as to what we do. And it makes for a better community. And I'm very proud to work with them. And I thank all of them for that work. And thank you for listening today. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wagstaff. Questions?
I just have one comment. I looked up in the dictionary what lean means, and it just said DA's office. We might have to give it a new name, Lean Mean Prosecuting Team. What do you think?
I
We need to
like
have a little
that.
title, and need a little logo with you guys in court or
If
something.
Mr. Maltby just helps me out with a couple of ideas that I've suggested to him over the years on getting even leaner, but he just smiles when I say that.
Thank you so much for the great work that you do, Steve.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions, Steve.
Yes.
Could you just speak kind of at a high level about crime trends and what we've observed over the last year, and and what we've observed with realignment now, a couple of years under our belt, and I think it would be helpful in the presentation next year. Maybe you could put that in there, and I haven't had a chance to delve into all the incredible materials that have been put up on the county performance website, so it could perhaps be there. But if you could speak to that and comment on that a little bit.
Yes, President Pine, you're absolutely right. And why I expect I will be able to give you a far more informed report next year is that I expect we'll have that case management system in place. And I know I've been saying that for some years now about as soon as we get that case, we're going to really be able to delve into what those trends are. Because we know in going through the Department of Justice, there's two aspects to it. Number one, they're always behind by a couple of years. And number two, it depends on the quality of reporting, and I know that varies between counties, and so I'm not sure how accurate some of those statistics are, but I do want to do that. It's a great question as to what realignment's done, because you're right, we're now approaching 3 years into realignment and trying to gauge what exactly impact it has had. My answer to your question is more anecdotal than it is statistically based, but to my observation, I think as long as we keep giving two things, the resources to the people such as Chief Keene, Gene Frazier, and the other agencies that are providing resources for these people who are coming out and we're dealing with it, we're going to see that crime going down. We have not seen, in my office, the violent crime has not gone up in any fashion. It has not. And that was a big concern. Some counties, they say it has. Additionally, I know that in terms of overall crime in the county, they had that peak certainly where we had property crimes went dramatically up. And what we learned in our county was it generally wasn't being committed overall by San Mateo County residents. The addresses, as the sheriff has noted many times, are San Francisco, Oakland, East Bay, who are coming in because they see San Mateo County as a good spot to do burglaries or other types of identity theft, et cetera, on that line. But in terms of our violent crime, not much. What we have seen now, a little drop in and a lot of it gets tied to the recession. This all started when we were in the recession. And what occurred during the recession before realignment came in was an increase in our theft crimes, embezzlement, identity theft. Those clearly went up. That started to level a little bit, I believe, and as we come out of it a bit, and I guess people get jobs, we're not seeing we were seeing embezzlements by as small places, dental offices, by the people there, small offices. It isn't always just the great big one that the media might be interested in. We are seeing a lot of those, not seeing as many of those coming through at this point. So it's anecdotal. Next year, I hope it will not be anecdotal. I can actually point to you and say, look at here's these specific numbers. But I'll also say something. I'm eating into your time, Chief Keene, and I promised you I'd give you time. But one of the things is in juvenile, a fascinating number that I saw that, again, we don't have a true statistical analysis on, but I've talked both with the sheriff and Chief Keene about it, is from 2009 through 2013. The number of cases being processed through the juvenile court, and this is the workload that the court has in juvenile, went down dramatically. The number of cases going through, 50%. That's 50, not 15. 50% dropped off. And I've explored with them, why is that? And I think it's a variety of things. But again, Mr. President, it's anecdotal, is number one, that we know the drop is there. We know that in juvenile back in 2008 that we sent 1,800 and something cases through the court system. In 2013, we sent just a shade under 900 through. So that's a 50% drop. I know that the police departments are doing a lot of intervention, diverting out of the system, saying there are certain cases don't need to go in. There are certain misdemeanors that they're saying this isn't an area that we, with our reduced resources, have time to deal with as much. And I think probation's done the same thing. They've done a whole bunch of, we're going to do programs. We don't need, this is a youth we don't need to send into the court system on that line. That has reduced the court's load. They don't, obviously, as it has my offices there. If you have 50% fewer cases going through the courts on that line. It'll be interesting to see if that continues, that trend. I also think it is programs where we're diverting youth before they ever commit the crime. And that's programs like the PAL program, the SAL program, all the various programs that are being done out there. I think in the juvenile area, it's had an impact. I don't know whether that's a model that one looks at for in the adult world or not. It's part of what needs to be studied, and Chief Keene is far better at that than the district attorney's office, and I know he will, but that's a very long answer to a short question.
Okay. Well, thank you for that feedback. And then finally, just I guess a comment and maybe a question too is, I think it is really very appropriate and important to have this focus on the victim services. So you spoke a lot about being lean and mean, but if this is an area where I think I'd be supportive of investment. If you can you comment about some specific things you want to do this year to try to enhance that?
Well, the couple of areas that I very much want to do is I want to, again, restitution. I want to continue to work with Chief Keene and really doing everything we can. I know our courts are strapped. It's not the time to be asking this, but I have commented to Mr. Fidden about this, and I think Judge Foyles, that there's one county that has, over in Alameda County, they have a restitution court for victims, where they bring these people back in, just like they do in the drug programs and and the Veterans Court here, where they bring the offenders back into court to see how are you doing in your program. In Alameda County, they have a restitution court where they bring them back in to say, all right, how's that restitution to the victim occurring? And that's a certain avenue that when times are different than where they are now. I don't want them feeling that pit in their stomach as I say that, but that to me strikes me. I've talked to Nancy O'Malley, the district attorney of Alameda, and she felt that was a point where they made a change over there. And Chief Keene's from that county. He will know more about that than any of us, and I've talked to him about maybe someday that could be something. Additionally, I want more reach out to our victims. I don't want it to be just in the violent cases. I had a member of the Planning Commission in San Mateo come meet with me because his wife had been the victim of a crime just a few weeks ago. And when he came to our office and he said, you know what, well, I've got this crime that's been committed. I'm sorry, that's not on our list of what our grants and our resources allow us to do. We can't provide you services on that line. I want to change that. I don't want to ever hear that. And I've heard that at other times. I'm sorry for property crimes and the like. That would be an area I'd go into more resources where we can reach out and help those victims and make sure that this system, which seems like this massive impersonal system, can actually be, at least in one area, there'll be some warmth where you have a victim advocate who is trained in that arena, can actually reach out to people and try and help them early on and understand in that area. I think right now we're deficient in that area and can do a better job.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Again, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Our next presenter will be John Keene from the Probation Department.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Steve. I paid him a little money extra to cut into some of my time, and he did a pretty good job of that. Good morning, supervisors. President Pine, Mr. Mulvey, Mr. Byers, Ms. Sacco, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to present before you today. It really marks an opportunity for us to really talk about what our hopes are moving forward in terms of the use of performance management to be much more data-driven and much more focused on targeting the things that most need unlimited resources. So we really appreciate this opportunity to be before you today. To start, as we look at how we focus ourselves as an agency, we first must start at our mission statement. Our mission, more than anything else, is to enhance community safety, reduce crime, assist the victims of crime through offender accountability and rehabilitation. And one of the things you'll hear me focus a lot on in terms of the rehabilitative aspect is that we certainly put a lot of emphasis on that in probation, but I want to caution you and hopefully remind you that oftentimes habilitation is really the starting point. As we start to work more diligently around the offenders, we will work with the realignment. I think you'll find that conversation will be brought full circle for us. That the hope of rehabilitation is that we're putting people back to a place that they were once positive. But we have to recognize the fact that many of the people that we have the real opportunity to work with are not starting from a very positive place. And so we're introducing skills, beliefs, and values that oftentimes may be absent. One of the things we also want to point out in our mission statement here is that we believe it closely aligns with the mission and vision of the county as a whole. We think obviously we focus and lay right in perfectly with the idea of healthy, safe, and strong communities. And we believe that that has to be our focus. We have to align our goals and missions with those overall of the county. Our vision statement is really a mission for us, a vision for us to be the best that we possibly can be. We see ourselves wanting to be a proactive and innovative agency which focuses on positive change in offenders' behaviors and reduces recidivism by fostering a law-abiding lifestyle. So it's more than just saying people won't commit crimes. It's really, once again, becoming active members and positive members of their community, which is our community. When we look at the idea of how do we measure our success and what do we think about, the most telling thing, obviously, is the idea of how many probationers successfully complete probation. Probation is going to start tracking the percentage of offenders that successfully complete probation in fiscal year 14-15. This number will reflect offenders in 3 of our 5 main divisions, namely juvenile services, adult services, and realignment and reentry. For the adult and juvenile services divisions, a successful completion of probation will be indicated by an offender not having a new law violation in a 12-month period. For a realignment and reentry division, a successful completion of probation or termination will be indicated by an offender having completed his sentence and not having a new felony conviction. On this graph, we say that our target is 72%. And one of the things that's very difficult about benchmarking this is looking across the various counties and oftentimes the state to see how individual departments and sometimes regions measure what is considered to be successful. Our 72% is in perfect alignment of really the idea that we know we have work to do. We know that there has been a lot of anecdotal work in our field, and with the advent of evidence-based practices, and as you've heard this morning from 2 other agencies, this idea of using data to drive our focus, we believe that we're going to increase that number. But as a benchmark, I would like to refer you to the Chief Probation Officers of California have a benchmark listed for this goal at 69%. Our goal is to be above that at 72. As we look a little deeper into what it will take to effectively supervise those people we have on probation, we recognize that evidence-based assessments will be a key to that principle. We recognize that ultimately, just kind of having this kind of one-size cookie-cutter approach will not be effective. So we'll have to delve into individualized supervision and case management plans for each person that we supervise. So as a focus of that, we estimated that 87% of our offenders will get an assessment in the year 13-14, and we're striving for 100% moving forward in the year 14-15. And the reason why we want to give ourselves that leeway of striving towards 100% in the future is recognizing that we have to, 1, look at the tools we currently use, make sure that it works positively for our population, and give ourselves the opportunity to make adjustments moving forward. Also, it's a recognition that as we start to think about, as our DA mentioned before, as we look at some of our young people who are coming into our system, we don't want every person into our system. So while we may have cases where we do referrals or divert those cases outside of the system, we won't do full-blown assessments on those cases, because the idea is to get maybe an idea through a preliminary triage assessments where we'll look at some of the primary things we need to hit, but we don't necessarily want to pull them in the system more than we need to. We're also will be looking at the percentage of adult offenders completing probation without sustaining new law violations. The adult division currently supervises 1,900 regularly supervised cases, and there are approximately 1,100 administrative cases that are on our bank, administrative bank, which means that they're receiving limited services. Approximately 63% of our adults successfully complete probation in one fiscal year. And we know that obviously that is a target or goal that we can work on, but we do believe as we focus more with evidence-based practices, as well as our new case management system, that will help us increase that number in the future. The percentage of juvenile offenders completing probation without a new law sustaining violation, this is a really important target for us because we feel like one of the main ways in which we can ultimately reduce and stop this reoccurring cycle of recidivism is to find ways to reach our young people, to get them out the system faster, not bring them in the system where possible. But those people that we do have in the system with us, we want to work really hard to make sure that that one time they come with us, We provide them with the services that they and their families need not to return again. We're happy to report that 80% of our youth complete their probation without sustaining a new law violation. We also talked a lot about realignment, and there were some really good questions by President Pine with regard to what trends we see. We recognize that looking at the realigned population and hoping and making sure that they won't have any new law violations will be critically important for us as we move into the future. In this space, it really highlights one of the most collaborative pieces of our work. As was mentioned by the DA, we've worked closely with the courts, with the sheriff, with our partners in health, to really come up with a comprehensive reentry plan, which we brought to you a few weeks ago, and thank you once again for your support in that. We feel positive that along with this collaborative partnership, we're going to see very positive outcomes with regard to helping those people in that realigned population. Our division currently supervises 428 people that fall into this category, which includes both our realigned population as well as the mandatory supervision cases. On average, approximately 70% of these realigned offenders complete their probation without any new law violations. One of the consistent things, as the DA mentioned, that we also noticed was that primarily most of the people who in this population who did have new violations, they were primarily around substance abuse related issues. There were some issues in relation to property crimes, but overwhelmingly these were substance abuse related cases. Referring back to our juvenile courts and our youth involved in our programs, we recognize that court-ordered programs are going to be critical towards our long-term success for our young people. One of the things that we feel very proud of as an agency is that we believe we have some of the most diverse programming for our young people anywhere in the Bay Area and, quite frankly, anywhere in the state. We work primarily and closely with our community-based partners as well as our county partners to give programs that we believe have the strong ability to not only enhance the young people, but also build upon some of the issues I mentioned before. We're taking young people in who, quite frankly, need to be habilitated, not rehabilitated. And we also are having to step into spaces where many of our parents and our communities are struggling. And so we feel very confident and comfortable that by enrolling our kids in the programs that we have as a county, we're going to have a positive outcome. And so on average, we have a goal, and we've enrolled 93% of our youth in our court-order programs. We look at our budget summary. We really also believe in the idea of trying to look within first before we come to the county to ask you to help us with staffing. We have really tried to work really hard at using the add-delete process to try to look in SIMS and see where do we have opportunities from within to build and then work with that before we come forward and say that we need help. When you look at our positions, there are 2 new requests for IT positions and administrative assistants, and that was used, we primarily feel that by using 4 vacant DPO positions, which really have helped to offset the cost. And that's a perfect example of where we will have no county costs directly to you. The new positions that are also mentioned there also include 2 DPOs for realignment and 1 for reentry. Some of our highlights for the year, we obviously want to continue to focus our efforts on highlighting the positive things that are happening at Camp Kemp. We are in the process now of working closely with the county manager's office to look at how do we further develop Kemp out into totally fulfilling it to be the program that we really want it to be. But we're very proud of the changes we've made to it. Our Girls Empowerment Program is unique anywhere in the state. We are probably one of the only few counties that has a certified high school as part of our camp programming. We also want to highlight an accomplishment of completing our department-wide reorganization. We're back to a traditional probation structure with adult, juvenile, and facility institution divisions. We're very proud of that, and we believe that's going to make us most effective moving forward. We also had the tremendous benefit of working collaboratively with our county partners on a county-wide single reentry plan. And one of the things I also wanted to mention was that Jean actually mentioned something in her program, in her department, that actually reminded me of something that we're doing ourselves. We actually are also starting to plant the seeds towards a succession planning group within our agency. We have 2 projects we want to highlight. One is Project Boss, which you saw a presentation on a few months back, where we're taking our staff and giving them the opportunity to see what it feels like to run various divisions within probation to help build those skills necessary to be our future leaders within the organization. And probation is also putting on a probation leadership academy. The first phase of that leadership academy was done with our command staff, and we're now moving down into our middle managers with the goal of bringing up all of our individuals within our department so we can have a strong, united team who can provide leadership well into the future. Really, the focuses of the Leadership Academy will be on adaptive leadership, emotional intelligence, and coaching, mentoring, and performance evaluation. Our goal is to, one, build and increase leadership capacity throughout our probation department, and two, to really align ourselves with the results of the Employee Engagement Survey, which said that our staff want to have an environment that is positive and fun to work in. Some of our highlights for moving forward, it will be the implementation of the phase. We're in the implementation phase of our new probation case management system. While I don't want to necessarily start to blow horns and drop confetti, we are optimistic but cautiously so that we are on track to be able to hit our targets and to have our probation case management system up and running. As we mentioned, and you've heard us talk about this before, data will be our future. It will help us determine what we need to focus in on and how we will target our resources and which populations to work most efficiently and effectively with. We will continue to work on an evidence-based assessment platform for all adult offenders. We had some success in that this year. We're actually using, we'll be using assessment tools to help generate what supervision models will look like, not only for individual offenders, but also in terms of how we will set up our organization. How will we provide supervision based on their risk? We had an opportunity to provide 4 probation-led multi-agency operations this year, focusing in on not only probation violations and making sure that folks are in compliance, but also working closely with our partners in local law enforcement and the sheriff's office, who we have a great relationship with, who are always there when we ask them to be. Really more towards enhancing our evidence-based supervision practices, as I mentioned before, and we've contracted with JBI, which is Justice Benefits Incorporated, which is a government facilitation agency to help us work with our Title IV-E claims moving forward. Challenges, and we do say challenges, but we also look at them as opportunities. There are significant IT needs for the probation department. As you've heard us talk primarily about how we want to use data, we know obviously that our case management system needed to be upgraded, and we're in the process of working on that. But also I believe a significant issue for us is making sure that we have a sustainable IT solution in-house. We have a few dedicated people who are, quite frankly, are working at max capacity and then some. And moving forward, I don't think that's a sustainable model. So we know that that's going to be something we have to focus in on moving forward. We talked about the implementation of the new case management system. While I said we certainly don't want to have confetti falling yet, the reality is that we know that as you start to roll that out, there's going to be challenges that come with that. There are going to be needs for us to take a step back and work with it. And really, I have to really give a lot of credit to my staff because they understand that the only way we're going to build a real strong system is going to be through staff participation. And so we're asking our staff to step up, to test this thing, as I tell them, to try to break it, to see what really it can do for us, to make sure that once it goes live and we hit the switch and you ask us for data on whatever the case may be, we can effectively provide that to you. As I mentioned on a previous slide, we certainly are working with JBI to look at our Title IV-E claiming capability, but we have to realize that there's probably an opportunity or a chance that we're going to have some reduction in our revenue in Title IV-E moving forward. The state of California is facing new criteria for 4E claiming. Also, the federal government is looking at 4E as a whole, and there may be some changes or limitations placed on it that will be outside of our control. So that could be a significant challenge for us moving forward. You heard a little bit before about other agencies talk about challenges in terms of recruitment. We are facing recruitment challenges ourselves, particularly in our institutions. We certainly need to work on new styles and new creative ways to enhance individuals and entice people to come to our department. We'll be working on strategies to build a new recruitment model for our institution's platform. Another significant challenge could be the implementation of our new juvenile risk assessment tool. The tool we're currently using is, it is serviceable. However, I believe that we need a new juvenile assessment tool to be better normed for San Mateo County. One of the key components of assessment tools is they need to be geographically sound, and they need to reflect the population in which you try to use them in. And so we feel that a year of observation and looking at what we have, we believe that there's a need for us to change our juvenile tool. And lastly, the unfunded Prop 36 mandate. We certainly want to continue to be as collaborative and work as closely with our partners in the courts and with other county partners. However, Prop 36 is a challenging workload. There's a tremendous amount of cases that come from that court, and it's not necessarily a mandate that is funded. And so moving forward, we would like to explore, and we have had an opportunity to explore conversations with regard to other alternatives to providing effective supervision for those clients. Our priorities moving forward into the coming years, one will be to become a certified evidence-based organization. Currently, there are no probation departments in the state of California who will take this on. I believe that we have the capacity to do it. I believe that it will distinguish our department and our county in a way that will put us in the forefront for funding opportunities, either through grants or endowments that would like to work with organizations that are deeply committed with becoming evidence-based. So in furtherance of that, that will be our focus over the next 2 years. It's a very stringent process, but we believe that we have the capacity to do it. As I mentioned before, the new case management system, making sure that we fully utilize it, we put all the effort into it to create the program that we really want. Also utilizing Camp Kemp on a full-time basis. As I've mentioned to many of you, Camp Kemp is one of those programs that we certainly, if we had our way, we would certainly fill it up to capacity, but it's a collaborative effort in picking the girls who most fit that program. So we work very closely with our partners in the courts and work very closely with the DA and the defense bar to make sure that the young ladies who are in that program are best suited to be in that program. And so we really want to do our best to make sure that we evaluate those young ladies and evaluate their process to max capacity to try to build upon not only the success of what we've done in the past year, but where we hope to move forward, which will be to enhance more and create more trauma-informed care within the program, to look at our commercially sexually exploited young population, as well as other emerging practices which are directed towards girls programming. And then also the evidence-based assessment tools. I've mentioned that on a couple of occasions that we know that the reality is that not just probation assessment tools have to be there, but we also recognize that whether it's educational tools, whether it is tools that help us figure out what are better programming in terms of outs in the community, we know those things are needed. And just in wrapping up here, to continue to work towards being an evidence-based program through our practices, to build an emergency response team for our institution officers. That's important because we recognize that we want to make sure that we treat and work with our young people in our hall in a safe and humane way. And so we do recognize that there will be emergencies and crises from time to time, but we want to be able to handle that in a way that is not only safe for the young people that we supervise and service, but also for those staff who work there. We want to increase our officer and field safety training. As been noted earlier, our staff work very collaboratively with our law enforcement partners. This has only been enhanced through realignment. We have more staff in the field than ever before, and as a consequence of that, it is my belief that we need to increase our safety and field awareness. And then we want to continue our collaboration with our county partners in providing services to the folks that we have the honor and privilege to supervise. In closing, I just want to take this opportunity once again to thank you for taking time to hear our performance measures moving forward. We truly have had an incredible year in probation this year. We've made significant strides in terms of not only enhancing our supervision, but I think we've made strides in increasing and building upon the successes that our staff put out every day. The most important and the most valuable resource we have in our agency are our employees. Our probation staff, field services, and institutions work mightily every day to not only enhance the services they provide to those people we service, but really to honor the fact that we are proud to work here in San Mateo County. So with that, I'll take any questions you have for me.
Okay, Supervisor Groom.
Chief Keen, I would like to thank you very much for reassessing and really evaluating Camp Kemp. I think that it was in the previous administration, the plug was pulled too quickly, and so I just think it's a wonderful program for young women in our community who get themselves in trouble, and so your reevaluation of it is really appreciated.
Thank you, Supervisor.
I was going to ask a similar question about Camp Kemp. Is it actually fully utilized? I thought we were actually one time looking for other probation departments that might be sending young women to our program. Is that worked out or not?
Well, I think one of the things we had to strongly consider in that is this idea of population mixing. So we've been working collaboratively with our partners here in the county, with Social Services, HSA, also working with the courts to really look at how do we safely bring the right amount and the right types of young ladies together. One of the things that we have that benefits us here in San Mateo County is that our young ladies, quite frankly, are more pliable and have more family bases or family strengths to work upon. And the concerns we had was that some of the places that will offer girls to us, quite frankly, I think we're bringing young ladies into our population that could challenge the positive steps that other girls have made. So we are evaluating now the idea of looking at potentially blending populations, but I have to say that from our perspective, we think that that has to be met with some reservation. And while we certainly want to make sure we utilize it to max capacity, the key thing there is whether we have 15, 30, or 5 girls, we want success.
Okay. The other thing, you talked about the court-ordered programs for juveniles. Can you give us a thumbnail sketch of what they look like?
So for example, we have whether it's cognitive-based programming inside of our halls or in our camps, or whether it's working with our Star Vista in the community, or a Y or places like that, we actually provide really directed services that we suggest and the courts suggest are really focused for young people. So for example, if we think a young person could really benefit from anger management or conflict mediation or things of that nature, we will make referrals directly to those types of programs. And what we feel really strongly about is that whether it's inside of our facility, in either of our camps, they can get those types of activities and programming directly from us as well.
I guess the last question I had to do with your reorganization. I know at one time there was a deputy chief in probation. I don't know, were you able to achieve that? Is that part of your reorganization, or is that something for the future? Your organization does appear to be considerably more complex than in the past.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think at this point we have not moved in that direction. It hopefully is something we can discuss in the future. But as it currently stands now, we do have deputy chiefs over each of our 4 divisions. And there is not an assistant chief or chief deputy position at this point.
Well, maybe we could look at that for next year's budget, not this one, but in the future. But in any case, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
I had two questions. Going back to Camp Kemp, I just think I haven't been able to keep up with that. So, there was a time when we weren't using it at all.
Yes.
And so now we are actually using the facility to a certain extent.
Yes.
And for a certain population. Could you just fill in those, kind of round that out for me?
So as it stands today, we have 2 populations that are currently at Camp Kemp. We have the young ladies who, through a court order, are in essence sentenced to spend time at Camp Kemp. And that population is today, I want to say, probably somewhere between 6 to 7 girls. Mm-hmm. Then we have another 8 to 9 girls that are part of what we call the Girls Empowerment Program. The Girls Empowerment Program is really focused in on young girls who have not yet reached the point to where they need to come from out of their home and stay with us on a 24-hour basis, but are having some concerns. So what we've had the opportunity to do is work closely with education and with our partners in HSA and some of our community-based partners to build a program that has a high school component to it. So they're coming to us in the morning, going to school, and attending classes for the entire day, and they're receiving program in the afternoon. So right now we're averaging around 15 to 16 girls that are currently in the program. The Kemp facility itself has a capacity for 30. And so the goal for us is still to go back and move completely back into Camp Kemp on a full-time basis, where all of our residential programming is there. Because now, currently, those 6 to 7 girls who are in, who've been sentenced to camp, currently move back and forth each morning from our facility over to camp. And so while that is not ideal, our staff have done a yeoman's job of keeping as much of the continuity between that programming in place as you possibly can. However, as you can imagine, trying to create a family-based, family-oriented type program and environment is difficult when you have to bring the young ladies back, research, go back through all the things that you need to do to once you enter back into a secure facility. So while it is not ideal, we certainly feel very proud of what we've accomplished. So the goal ultimately down the road will be to figure out, and working closely with the courts and the DA and the defense bar, to figure out how do we put more kids in that program who, once again, are the appropriate kids to be there.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And then my second question goes to the risk assessment tools, which you mentioned a couple times. And is there any work underway or discussions underway concerning potential use of some of these nationally based risk assessment tools in the pretrial environment? That's something you see in the reports that are always circulated about realignment and such, and just wanted to see if we had been giving that some consideration.
We have, Supervisor. We've been working closely, myself and Deputy County Manager Callaghan. We've been talking about what that looks like. We certainly have done research on a couple of the national tools that are in existence. There is a tool that's in place in Santa Cruz County that is based on a national tool out of Wisconsin, I want to say, that has done, from what I've been told, really good work in relation to helping that pretrial population. We have also made some modifications in our own OR program to look at things like, for example, women with children, to put more of an enhancement towards giving them opportunities and make referrals for them to be eligible for OR. And we look at the pretrial population. There's a much more complex long-term plan that's necessary, but we certainly have started to have some of the seeds of that conversation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously, ultimately, that decision will always have to be made by a judge and can't be automated in any way. But no, I think that data hopefully would be helpful to the judiciary as well. So I appreciate your continuing to look at that.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
So, colleagues, do you want to take a little break?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll reconvene our meeting with a presentation on the Sheriff's Office by Sheriff Greg Monks.
Thank you, President Pine, honorable members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers, and Mr. Sacco. Yes. Well, I think I'm the only one that got the memo about 10 minutes. I think District Attorney is still, that third grade math isn't working too well for him. He was trained in law school, so yeah, more is better, I guess. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about our performance report and the mid-year budget update. This is the Sheriff's Office mission statement. It seems to have grown since the last time I saw it, but I won't read the entire thing. But The last sentence is really the crux of it. The Sheriff's Office is committed to providing effective professional law enforcement services in a humane and cost-effective manner while supporting positive development within our communities and especially our youth population. This is a graph representing our satisfaction rating. We have the CARE surveys that are put at all of our substations and points of public contact, and very proud of the ratings that we get there. As far as this graph represents the positive associations or new suspects identified through our lab. And the three systems that are represented there are AFIS, which is the automated fingerprint identification system, CODIS, which is the combined DNA index system, and NIBIN, which is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. This really, in one slide, kind of represents the future of forensic analysis, not just here, but throughout the United States. We are getting more and more hits off of, especially the DNA database. And if you look at that, the first year where there seems to be a spike, that was the year Prop 69 started mandating that all felony arrests go into the system. So there was a surge right away when a lot of people that weren't in the system got in, and a lot of the older cases were getting made. But we think going forward that the target is a reasonable target. And just quickly, a few cases. We recently made a bank robbery in Millbrae. It was a fake gun, but it was an armed robbery. We recovered the bag with the gun in it, and through DNA analysis, DNA that was taken off the gun, we were able to identify the suspect in that case. Interestingly enough, it was a twin. They were twins, and they had the same DNA, but the other twin had been deceased before the time of the incident, so we were able to make that one. A more recent case of interest is a sexual assault murder case from 1989 in Brisbane. You might have read about it in the paper recently. There again, going back into an old case, taking DNA samples that were never at the time able to be analyzed, and we were able to make a hit on that to a neighbor of hers, and he's in custody right now. And then I know the district attorney talked about the Sunnyday case. In that case, we were able to link 36 different cases together through the NIBIN system, through firearms, and that kind of speaks to the way that firearms are shared and used from one crime to the next. So again, we see this as the future, and as DNA becomes more automated and easier to analyze, we're going to see it in more and more routine cases. As a matter of fact, on a regular basis, we're making burglary cases and stolen vehicle cases with the use of DNA, which in the past was too cost prohibitive. This slide speaks to the number of interventions that our transit unit is making on an annualized basis along the train tracks, especially. As you know, suicides along the train tracks are a persistent problem. I think they average about 14 per year. And this is the number of times that our staff have intervened in a situation where you've got a desperate individual along their train tracks. And it usually ends in them placing a psychiatric hold on the individual. It's happened. Most recently, we had a couple of cases in San Mateo, a case in Mountain View, where either a loved one or a passerby noticed somebody acting, either in distress or unusual near the train tracks. Our folks went out there. In these three cases, they were people that were contemplating suicide, and our folks were able to intervene, get them the psychiatric help that they needed, and all three of those cases prevented tragedy. This is the number of call-outs that our bomb squad have conducted on an annualized basis, where they have located and rendered safe a device. And in most cases, the work that they do centers around fireworks and kind of low-level devices. In many cases, they're just suspicious looking. They turn out to be nothing. But in recent cases, we've gone out to San Bruno, where there was a rocket-propelled grenade that was found in somebody's house. A lot of times, people will bring these back from the war. The most common scenario is, somebody's father or grandfather comes back from the war with a hand grenade or some sort of device that sits up in the attic, and then when somebody passes away, somebody's cleaning out the house, they call us, we come out. But our bomb squad trains regularly. They are recognized throughout the Bay Area as one of the, we're the only bomb squad in the county, so we respond on a mutual aid basis to all the different agencies, and we are in constant contact with the NCRIC, the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, staying up on trends with respect to potential terrorist types of events. This is the number of inmates that are assessed. We just adopted the CASE tool, which probation uses. It's an evidence-based assessment tool. It's called the Correctional Assessment Intervention System. So the number, the estimate for the first year represents, those were the Achieve 180 folks. The Achieve 180 folks were given this CASE tool before. We are adopting that, and we will be using that for our whole system. And this is part of our strategic implementation plan. It's our goal to assess everyone that comes into the system. Not everybody will receive the full screening because a lot of people just come in and come out. But what we want to do is a better job of identifying those individuals that we can help through programming and use evidence-based tools to provide them with the appropriate type of programming. We have hired our first case managers, so those folks will be kind of steering that process, and they'll be working very close with our partners in probation, correctional health, and our community-based partners to make sure that these individuals are getting the right type of programming while they're in custody, and then making the appropriate handoff to the post-custody support, all being part of the reentry plan, the countywide reentry plan that you recently saw. Number of community service hours performed by Sheriff's Work Program. Our target, you can see that we are below our target in that. That's due to a couple of reasons. One is a policy change. We have had a problem with people failing to report on self-surrenders. Matter of fact, at one point it was about 60% of people failed to report when they had a surrender date. We changed our policy to not allow them access to the program once they had an FTA. But the bigger impact came from 4019 credits. That's a penal code that gives certain credits to individuals. So if somebody gets a 10-day sentence, if they come to jail, they actually do 2 days. By the time they get their good time, work time, and the 4019 credits, that they can do 2 days. If they go through the work program, they do 10 days. So, attorneys quickly advise their clients, if you go to jail, you can get it over with 2 days as opposed to stretching it out over 10 days. So that has also had an impact on the numbers. But still, we have a number of people, well over 300 in the program. The ADP is 325. And that still represents over 50% of our sentenced population. Our budget summary, you can see there that our total requirements are $208 million in fiscal year 14-15. That's an increase from last year. The primary reason for that is the addition of our positions for the new jail, which will come in halfway through this next fiscal year. So it's not a full year of funding. Our total sources exceed our net county cost by quite a bit. So, and those total sources represent Proposition 172 money, realignment money, which is going toward helping us manage the realigned population. And then we have a number of contracts. Our San Carlos, Half Moon Bay, Millbrae contracts amount to about $13 million. We get money from CSA 1, CSA 8 for enhanced services to those areas. And then we have contracts with Portola Valley, Woodside, and then Samtrans. Samtrans alone is about $12.4 million. So I believe that we have demonstrated a very effective shared service model that's worked really well for those communities. The communities of San Carlos, Millbrae, and Half Moon Bay have all improved their public safety since partnering with the Sheriff's Office, and have all improved their financial situation to the point where they're able to add back other important city services. We have a couple of concerns on our sources side. One is the SCAP funding. SCAP, as you'll recall, is the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, and that is money that the federal government gives us to help manage the incarceration of undocumented individuals. I think you've been briefed on changes to the ICE hold policy. We have recently stopped honoring ICE holds. What we don't know yet is what impact that will have on our SCAP funding. We currently have in our budget, I think it's about $1 million. We've budgeted $1.4 million. We last year, I think, got $700,000, so that was a shortfall in our budget, which we made up through savings. We're going to have to wait and see what happens with SCAP going forward, if it goes away or if it gets further reduced through that. And I'll keep you apprised through the county manager as to the impact of that. There is, that's kind of a changing situation. The change in our ICE policy had to do with a recent court case, and we're just kind of still working through that with the help of county counsel. Highlights for 2013-15, the 2-year Maple Street Correctional Center obviously is a big deal for us and for the county. That continues on course. It continues to be within budget. We've had many ups and downs through the process, but more ups and downs, and I'm pleased to report that the steel has been delivered to the site. It's starting to go up as we speak, and so over the next month or two, you will start seeing the...
Wasn't the same company that built the bridge, was it?
No, it was not, and we don't anticipate rust or leaks to the facility, but no, it's going great, and our jail planning unit, with the help of county council and manager's office and Public Works, I mean, everybody's doing a fantastic job to keep that project on pace, and the challenges that we've faced, again, are far exceeded by the positive and great work that they're doing. So we plan now, we are shooting for toward the end of next year as a completion date, but we fully expect to come in under the budget that you have allotted for that. Implementation of our reorganization plan, again, I want to thank you for your support of that. That's something that we were able to accomplish within our own budget. Didn't need additional money, but it gave us the opportunity to kind of retool and to refocus based on the growth that we've had, both through our contract cities and through the new jail project coming online. We now have 2 assistant sheriffs, both of which are here, Assistant Sheriff Gallagher, Assistant Sheriff Sanchez, and we've split the department into more kind of balanced and manageable divisions. And we think that that will better support what we're doing moving forward and put us into a more strategic position should other cities choose to talk to us about contract services. Again, I mentioned the continued success of our contract services. We feel that they are going very well. We've gotten much positive feedback from each of those communities. And again, we've seen improvements in public safety, and we've seen improvements in each of those cities' fiscal situations. Forensic lab contracts. We feel that our forensic lab, and Supervisor Horsley built it, is a shining star in our department. We think that it is a lab that will put up against any lab in the United States. It's accredited nationally, it's accredited internationally, and we now have contracts with the cities of Vallejo, Pittsburgh, Concord, Fremont, Livermore, Union City, and we do private work for the Serological Research Institute, which supports the Innocence Project. And we've had at least one case where the work that our lab has done has proved a person that's, I can't remember, serving life or death penalty, but someone that was wrongly convicted of murder, and our lab did the work that was able to prove that individual's innocence. So the work that they do isn't always to convict people, it's also done to exclude innocent people. The school safety efforts, I think Supervisor Tissier touched on that, and I want to thank her for her leadership, and Supervisor Horsley for the work on the Newtown Summit and the Beyond Newtown, the follow-up. There's a lot of fantastic work that's being done by a lot of different individuals, the school districts, mental health professionals, law enforcement. We've made tremendous progress. Captain Mark Weiss in my office has led our efforts. We have now standardized response protocols, standardized emergency plans for every school. I think we have 23 school districts. All the schools in those districts, the 15 different police departments, sheriff's office, we all are now operating off the same response plan, the same emergency plan, the same terminology. Something that you would think would be in place, that was actually a pretty big deal. And then with your support of the mental health community, they're standing up these regional threat assessment teams that we can work with. And then we have continued work going on, led by County Council, on the whole privacy issue of being able to share information. There's many barriers between law enforcement, mental health, and schools when it comes to HIPAA and FIPA or whatever, and then our law enforcement protocols. So being able to share information between those disciplines sometimes is difficult, and thanks to the work of County Council, thanks to the work of the folks that went back to Georgetown to study this in more depth, and I know Supervisor Horsley went down to San Diego. There's been a lot of work done to identify ways that we can better share that information so that in times of crisis that we can get the type of interventions that we need to prevent those types of tragedies. So a lot of work has been done, a lot of work has yet to be done, and but our county should be very proud of the progress that it's made. Domestic violence program is our DV gun takeaway program. It continues to flourish, and the county manager was very supportive in keeping the program going despite cuts from the state. To date, we have seized or had surrendered 1,183 firearms. It is a model program. It's been highlighted in the New York Times as a model for other agencies to aspire toward, and it does a great job. So very proud of that program. As far as our priorities, continue to manage the system under realignment. We, with the, I think, forward-looking efforts of the court and the use of split sentencing and other work of the DA, the probation department, our partners through Service Connect, I think we're doing a great job of managing what we got. The disproportionate impact of the female population has been felt. Our women's population had increased, anywhere from 30 to 40% since realignment, whereas the male population, it was more like a 10% increase. So our women's jail continues to be severely overcrowded, and the men's jail continues to experience the kind of chronic overcrowding that we've seen, both of which will be alleviated with the opening of the new facility. And we think we'll be more successful once our strategic implementation plan is done with the county-wide reentry plan. We think that we are going to be able to positively impact recidivism and have better outcomes. The strategic hiring plan, working very closely with human resources. We have to hire over the next, probably 8 to 10 months, we need to hire between 50 and 60 new employees. So that's a big deal for us. That's a lot of individuals. Human resources, as they always do, are providing tremendous support, but our services staff has put together, I think, a very good strategic plan to do that. With that challenge comes opportunity. We are seeking to improve our numbers when it comes to women employees, to people of color, bilingual individuals. So we see this as an opportunity. We did something that we've never done before. We put together a cadet corps. It was kind of like a boot camp where we got individuals from the communities that we serve. And these are folks that might otherwise not look to law enforcement as a career. And we brought them in over, I think it was an 8-week period, and got them exposure to the office, got them exposure to the testing process, and tried to give them kind of a good foundation for entering our profession. And we think that we're going to get some good results in our next correctional officer recruitment. I talked briefly about the SIP for corrections. That's our strategic implementation plan. We are in the process of taking a look at our entire corrections from the day someone enters to the day that they get handed off to another post-incarceration support system. And part of that is the adoption of the case tool. Part of that is the hiring of our case managers. And we are very excited about that. We think that it's going to put us in a better position to manage our population and improve outcomes, and make sure that the kind of programming that we're providing is evidence-based and is going to be effective. Upgrades to the Coyote Point Training Center. I think most of you are aware that we are in the process of upgrading the range there. I know that it's not the ideal location for us. As long as we can both remember, people have wanted us out of the range, or out of Coyote Point. We were fortunate to find a donor that's willing to build an indoor range, so we're in the process of moving that project forward. We will build a 25-yard, 10-lane indoor range, which will bring about 80% of our noise and shooting inside. And then we're going to put some of our money that we've set aside from our reserves to upgrade the range to make it more, to make it safer, to make it less of a eyesore, if you will, and more functional for our staff. And it's really a regional asset. We have over 40 agencies that use that center, and we think that once it's improved, we'll be able to actually increase revenue as a result. Vehicle technology is a project that we're doing right now. Again, with existing resources, we're using reserves that we set aside, and that is to upgrade the computers in our cars, in-car cameras, all the kind of modern stuff that will allow us to do remote reporting and just be more efficient and safer out there. And then the revised OES JPA. The JPA for OES has not been updated in quite some time, and we're in the process right now. Supervisor Tissier chairs that committee of getting every city and special district to sign on to the new updated JPA, just to kind of modernize it and make it more relevant. So that, I think, was 10 minutes. Mr. District Attorney, was that? Okay. Okay. Well, that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? I just had to Sheriff Monks. Could you update us on the status of the planning for the warm shell in the jail facility?
Sure. So the company that we hired to do the strategic implementation plan, which had worked for probation before, RDA and Associates, we have extended their contract to help us through that process, do kind of a needs assessment. So I think the next step is we're going to have meetings with each of the supervisors individually, kind of get some feedback from you guys. We are have some meetings planned with the group that was part of the strategic plan to get input from them. Mike Callaghy from the County Manager's Office is very much involved in that process. We're working closely with the County Manager's Office. We talked about it at the last the oversight for the jail committee. I forget the name of that committee, but it's the steering committee, oversight committee. And we think that the best way to proceed will be to, at some point, come back to the board for kind of a study session. Once we get the different input from board members, from the community, from our own needs assessment to kind of study what makes sense, and then come back to the board maybe in the fall and do a study session where we can kind of vet those ideas, get any other public input, and it will ultimately be a factor of what is the use, how much does it cost, because there'll be tenant improvements involved.
Right.
And then, I'll have to make, a determination whether or not it fits with what we're doing inside the building. That's really the goal, is to do it. My goal is to get something that will improve outcomes and, work closely with what we're doing inside to improve people's chances of success on the outside.
Okay. And the other one, you were successful, or the county was successful together in obtaining some state funding to do some upgrades to McGuire and doing some mental health focused facilities there. I guess that just has to wait until people move over. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to wait, but, it does have to wait so we can clear out some space. But the way the state works, we're going to have to wait anyway, because, the process is so laborious.
Yeah.
It's going to take 2 years just to work through the, Public Works Board at the state and all the bonding and all that stuff. So, but we've got somebody working on it, and we're moving forward with the plans and meeting with our stakeholders and partners to begin that process.
Yeah, if you could keep us updated, that'd
Sure.
be terrific.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you. Sheriff Monks, this really isn't a budget question, but I know our street was blocked off a couple Sundays ago for a big exercise at the Roosevelt Elementary School.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but it is related to your work on Newtown and safe schools and emergencies. Could you just summarize what that was and what was
Sure.
involved in that
That was
exercise?
Redwood City Police Department doing a school, violence incident training. And we hired our folks there to support and to observe. My understanding is that it went really well. Redwood City did a great job of putting on a large-scale incident. We had our airplane up kind of in support. We had our OES assets, which are mutual aid assets, there to support them. And then we had a number of our folks there, all in a support role. It was Redwood City's deal. And I've spoken with the chief about lessons learned, and he's preparing a kind of a debrief and a report out, so we'll learn from what they did. But in the past, we've always done earthquake drills and tsunami drills, and unfortunately, with the state of what we're dealing with, this is the type of drills that are really important to see how does everybody work together. And I think one of the things that they did, which I'm particularly interested in learning more about, is interfacing with fire, getting fire into what they call warm zones or hot zones. Traditionally, fire stays out until everything is done. Well, with some of these tragedies, it's really important to get them in as quickly as possible. So we're looking at things like force protection and ways that we can support fire and get them into the warm and hot zones quicker. So that's what that was about, and I'd be glad to share those reports or that feedback that we get as a result of their exercise as soon as I get it.
Thank you for that report. And I also want to thank you for the plane that you mentioned that was flying, the sheriff's aircraft.
Yeah.
I think it flew over my house 172 times, circled around there. So
I told them to go real low, so hopefully they...
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Okay, then our final presentation this morning will be from a coroner's office.
Morning, President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Sacco, Mr. Byers. I'm happy to be here today to present our performance report for the coroner's office. Our mission is to independently investigate cause and manner of all unnatural and some natural deaths that occur here in San Mateo County. And we usually average about 2,300 deaths that are reported a year. And out of those 2,300, 23% of those actually require further investigation by my office. Our percentage of our care surveys that we send out to law enforcement, funeral homes, and families that we serve, we strive to maintain 90% of people rating our services good or better. For the past 3 years, we've exceeded that. And for the upcoming fiscal year, we're actually going to raise our expectations to providing 97% of people rating our services good or better. Our cost per investigation for fiscal year 12-13 was about $1,200, and we estimated for 13-14 that will go down just under $1,200, roughly around $1,100 per investigation is what it would cost. Our percentage of cases that we close in 45 days, the national average is 90 days for coroner's offices and medical examiners in the United States, but we average 45 days. We're able to close a case, and I believe that's a credit to the great staff that I have and the locations of our outside vendors that do toxicology and our in-house transcriptionists. We're able to beat the standard, and that's very, very important to families because oftentimes insurance companies rely on our reports to help close out insurance claims. It's another area that we're to increase to about 99% of the cases that we have investigate that we're able to close those in 45 days. Our cost per capita, this is a new performance measure that we're doing, and over the last 3 years it has gone down, and in the upcoming year we'll compare it to other counties in the Bay Area to see how we compare with them. Our budget summary, the only significant thing is a reduction of one of our administrative positions, which will save the county approximately $70,000. And we're going to reassign her duties to other individuals in the office to become a more effective and efficient organization. Our highlights, trying to achieve our 97% rating for services good or better. We'll continue to look at ways to save money for our investigations, and that will continue to go down hopefully, and to continue providing the to achieve 99% or better, closing our cases within 45 days. Our priorities for the upcoming years is our Save Life program that seems to be or continues to be very successful, and we want to be able to create a performance measure to track the success of that program, and also to see if there's other ways that we can bring that program out into the community to educate individuals before they actually come in contact with the juvenile courts, because right now that's the individuals that come to that program are people that have been sentenced as part of their condition of probation. We'll continue to do our every 15 minutes program, which we work collaboratively with the different law enforcement agencies that deal with a demonstration of a DUI that occurs. We play a big part in that, and we're going to continue to do that. One of the things that I have started a few months back was to enhance the public's knowledge of the coroner's office, and I've been doing that through Rotaries and Kiwanis clubs and CERT teams, meeting with the police chiefs and actually some city council people I've actually had the opportunity to meet with to discuss the responsibilities of the coroner's office. And our disaster planning, want to increase that. I think that's very crucial. We've had over the past 4 years, 3 once-in-a-lifetime career events, and we did very well, but I believe that there's room for improvement, and by doing that, we'll participate more with the Office of Emergency Services. I just want to thank my staff for the great work they do, the Board of Supervisors and the County Manager's Office for their continued support, and Heather Ledesma, our new analyst. She's been great. I've had an opportunity to work with her and some other projects throughout my career here, and I'm happy that she's with the County Manager's Office and actually assigned to us. It's great working with her. Questions?
Just one comment. I just wanted to commend you. I thought you handled that Asiana crash very effectively, very well. Thanks for a great job you did there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention the Asiana situation because you were very outspoken and vocal in defending the studies that you did and the investigations you did when some in San Francisco were trying to suggest that other things might have happened, and you were represented the county well in that situation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Mine was under 10 minutes, so.
You were quick.
Thanks.
Okay, well, that concludes our performance reports for this meeting. More to come in the future. I believe we now move to our recommended budget for fiscal 14-15. Mr. Malpe.
John's going to have me do it. Okay. So before you, there's a memo, two resolutions. One resolution adopting the 14-15 recommended budget, and the second resolution allocating to AB 109 funds for the court commissioner for a period of 3 years. I did want to bring your attention to the page 2 of the memo. The total recommended budget before you is $2.1 billion with 5,365 authorized positions, and the general fund is $1.383 billion with 4,117. I'm sorry, 4,117 authorized positions. The increase for all funds is $166.7 million. Over half of that is related to the sale of Circle Star Theater, which those proceeds have been put into a capital account for future projects. In addition, the board approved negotiated salary increases with the bargaining units, which added $22.3 million to the budget. There's also $18.5 million in new capital project expenditures, including new solar panel project, the McGuire Correctional Facility project local match that was just mentioned, and then facility condition index, or what's commonly known as FICUS projects, for $4 million. The animal shelter replacement project, which we're working with in collaboration with the cities, $2.5 million is budgeted, and then water fixture upgrades. In addition, we have Measure A totaling 8.6. That's primarily due to the 6-month extension of the Seton Medical Center agreement of $7.2 million. We have also some reappropriations that we had to put in this recommended budget so that we could bridge the gap between July, August, and September until the adopted budget is approved. And some of those things include the reappropriation of the Crystal Springs loan of $8.7 million, which the board has already approved. A number of parks initiatives, ongoing and one-time, totaling $2.7 million. AB 109 realignment budget, which has been approved by the board, added $3.9 million. No net county cost. That's all realignment funding. And let me mention that this is not part of the amount that the courts would get. The courts' money would come directly from the trust fund, so this is 3.9 for the county departments. The board approved community-based organizations was the board approved a 3% increase, so that adds $1.9 million to this budget. And the reentry, comprehensive reentry system that the board recently approved adds $1.8 million. And let me say that the community-based, the CBO increase is net county cost, as well as the comprehensive reentry system. With that, I'll open it up to questions in terms of what's in this budget. I did want to mention that there's a line item listing of all of the key ads in the budget in what's called Attachment A. And one of the things that was not included in this Attachment A was the $500,000 for Measure A funding for farm labor housing. It is in the budget. It's just it wasn't shown as a separate line item in Attachment A, but that is in here. So with that, I'll open it up to questions if the board has any.
Just have one quick question. Under the capital projects, are we putting any money into the range at the Coyote Point, or is that strictly Sheriff's Department?
I think there's some planning money in the budget. I'd have to go back and check, but we don't have the capital piece hasn't been appropriated yet. But that would be funded out of the capital projects budget, not the sheriff.
Okay, thank you. If there's no questions,
I
oh, you
had
do.
just a couple of questions. On the Seton matter, the amount is what is 7.2, 1.22 per month, and if the could you talk a little bit about what Seton will be doing for those funds? I know that they're going to continue to provide the services they traditionally have for Medi-Cal patients, and et cetera. But I understand they may be making some additional obligations because this funding is higher than it was in the past.
Well, actually, it's the same as it was in the past, 1.2 million. But there is a change in that the medical center, as you know, is going through a sale. It's anticipated that the sale will be completed by the beginning of next calendar year. And in the course of winding down the business activities at the hospital pending the new sale, one of the decisions that has been made, as I understand it, by the daughters was to cut back on their funding of the deficit at the hospital, and more importantly at Seton Coastside. And so specifically in this new agreement with Seton, there is language in a side letter that says that Seton Coastside will remain open and continue with the current client mix during the course of these wind-down activities. Of course, with the potential new owner-operator of the hospital, we make no commitment in terms of future funding, and of course, Seton cannot.
Okay. I mean, that's good to hear that Seton Coastside can be, operated as normal, at least till the new owner gets here. That's Supervisor Horsey-Well knows it's an important asset for us. A question on the parks. As you know, of course, with the closing of Memorial, that could, that's going to ultimately reduce park revenue potentially substantially. If Memorial is closed beyond, or through the whole season, it could be $300,000 in lost revenue, with probably not anywhere near that kind of reduction. So, I mean, I know we can't tell now, but I think when we come back in September, we should kind of keep an eye on that.
That's correct. We'll balance the books in September. After the season, we'll know exactly where we stand fiscally as a result of Memorial, and be able to make recommendations accordingly to the board.
And I just wanted to make a comment. I'm very pleased to see that we're making the investments in solar. I had a chance to talk to Jim Porter about this, and he did a great job in taking advantage of a regional contract in order to really get some great pricing. So our return on investment will be quicker than normal. So those are my comments. Any other comments?
Then I'll make a motion to approve, paper here, the resolution approving the fiscal year 2014-15 recommended budget submitted by the county manager, and also the resolution approving for the allocation from the AB 109 Realignment Trust Fund to reimburse the Superior Court for the cost of one court commissioner for 3 years.
Second.
So motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that is approved. So I believe now we move to our county manager's report.
Mr. President, members of the board, several items to call out in my report today. Firstly, in terms of the sheriff's office, to note that Deputy Rebecca Rosenblatt was a guest speaker at the Social Media, the Internet, and the Law Enforcement Conference held in May, discussing the use of social media in ongoing criminal justice incidents. There were hundreds of participants from around the world at the conference, and her remarks were received with a number of compliments about how our county is taking the lead in the use of social media to keep the public informed about incidents that may be occurring. In terms of the criminal justice system, both Chief Keene and the sheriff have updated you on the go live of the Criminal Justice Integration Project Phase 1. As in any project, there's been some challenges, specifically regarding interfaces with other departments. We've worked through those, and we certainly will apply lessons learned as additional departments cut over to the new ATIMS system in the coming months. In Health and Human Services, the Good Planning Equals Good Health event, Ms. Frazier touched on earlier, and I won't repeat this afternoon. And lastly, to note that the county received an award for the Devil Slide project, the trail project of the year in the under $2 million category. Thanks, of course, to Public Works, the BKF, Engineering, Parks, Granite Construction, all of whom were involved in the project. And I suspect by now most of the board members have been out there, especially if it's a spectacular day. But you can't go out there too often. It's just a wonderful opportunity to enjoy the county and just enjoy some spectacular panoramic views of the coastline. That concludes my remark, Mr. President.
Thank you. Before we move to board comments, I apologize, Mr. Fox, who wanted to speak on the budget item. So, Mr. Fox, if you still want to speak, that'd be fine.
Thank you again, President Pine, members of the board, and my fellow veterans for your service to the county. I'll be brief. Attachment A reflects it'll cost $900,000 to preserve 50 treatment beds. $18,000 a bed may well be a great price to pay if the treatment is effective, economical, and humane. If it is, then I support this adjustment. If the treatment is not supported by scientific evidence of its effectiveness and it does not save money in a humane way, then I oppose it. That is why I oppose the health system's worship of the Lanterman-Peters Short Act and HIPAA and support the implementation of Lora's Law. Another reason to be very concerned about mental health resource allocation is the children of our women and men re-entering civilian life after multiple deployments to 360-degree battlefields in Iraq and Afghanistan. Refusing to provide veterans with county-based transition support places their children at risk in new ways because the women living with PTS and military sexual trauma are a new and growing part of the veterans community. Those children do not need to lose their parents any more than they already have. Please vote to implement Lora's Law for their children.
Okay, we'll move to board comments. Would you like to start, Mr. Horsley?
Just a report that, I was out and spoke to the residents of Moonridge on June 5th after a real tragic incident. And I actually wanted to commend the staff from BHRS, Mark Wilcox Rittigers and Mary M. Wallace, as well as the Sheriff's Department came out and talked to the community. It was trying to put that community back together and actually address their concerns. I thought they did an excellent job. Then last week, on Thursday and Friday, I went down to Ventura and Camarillo to take a look at the facilities that they have that are for mentally ill folks. There were a couple of items on our agenda this time, 34 and 35, and they refer to the ACA's determination of residential exclusion, meaning that facilities where they have greater than 16 beds are excluded from federal reimbursement. I have to say that in Ventura and Camarillo, they handle this by actually having different providers for the different cottages. Each cottage had about 15 beds, or actually 15 beds, and they had the two that I could see were Telecare and ANCA, and it seemed to work out rather well. I was kind of skeptical of how you would be able to coordinate that, but they seem to have done a really remarkable job of coordinating. In any case, the facilities are a remarkable enhancement of how mentally ill people basically receive treatment and housing, and they I think are excellent models for us for the future for replacing our Cordilleras facility. Lastly, because of the problem with drought, especially on the coast side, I'm going to be meeting with Parks and Public Works and Environmental Health to talk about, what are we going to do with our parks? We've got at least one of our water districts that looks like they're going to be running out of water, and so I want to develop some kind of a contingency plan to be able to deal with the drought that we're experiencing on the coast side, as well as La Honda. that concludes my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Groom. Supervisor Slocum and Supervisor Tissier.
Just ever so briefly, I just want to thank my staff, OES, and all those that participate in Disaster Preparedness Day. We had it at the event center, and again, they were very pleased that first day. They were up 9%, which was, and last year they were up 20%, so they've been up another 9% over. So it does two things. It gets people in the fair for the first hour free, which is great for our families. But two, we had lots and lots of people and their families going through and really spending a lot of time on the demonstrations and working with CERT teams and things like that. So, you know, we'll continue to do it because I think it's an important thing for our community. But I do want to thank all those that participated in that effort.
Thank you. And I just had two things to report on. I spent the better part of a day doing a CAL FIRE tour recently, which was most interesting. It was really fascinating to get a real up close and personal view of kind of what life is like as a fire person. You know, 4 days on or three. It's 4 on, 3 off. Yeah, I think that's right. And so they were very. It was very comprehensive. We went to every single station and had time to talk. And of course, they provide a very nice lunch. I believe some of my colleagues have also enjoyed their cooking. So that was very, very interesting. Also, I sent around to my colleagues a notice about our next meeting concerning the topic of sea level rise, which is on Friday, June 27th from 8:30 to 11:30 over at the Foster City Council Chambers. That's a conference that Congresswoman Spear, some member Gordon and myself are bringing forward to continue a dialogue about sea level rise. This one is really focused on city and special district folks, people who are on the ground who, you know, are going to have to deal with this problem in the future. So a little less talking to and more hearing from, you know, people who are going to have to really deal with this. So you're all very welcome. And actually, before I forget, I'll ask Mr. Malpe, when we're thinking about building the animal shelter, we definitely want our architects to think about the fact that it will be flooded. It may be a while, but one of the things we're going to talk about at the conference is to see what people think of adopting a paradigm of that the bay will rise 3 feet in this century, and it's not clear when in this century it will. But we will have storm events and other things. So something like that new facility is going to be, it won't be necessarily wiped out, but it will be subject to periodic flooding. So I want to make sure we think about that when we build it. Okay, Supervisor Tissier.
Yes, I was remiss. I do want to adjourn in memory of Mike Murphy. He was our former county council. He served the county for, unfortunately I don't have anything in front of me, but he served for several decades here in San Mateo County. And I look back to the years when I was in business, and I even worked with him on the Habitat Conservation Plan. That's how many years he had been here with the county. And he did a great service for all of us here on the board and for all the departments when he was our county council. And I thought maybe I could give John Byers a minute to say a few words.
Well, thank you for that, the opportunity, Supervisor Tissier. Well, I mean, the office has been a very dark place to work the last couple of weeks. I mean, as we think about Mike and what he has contributed to our personal lives and to our office and to the county of San Mateo broadly. I mean, Mike was, as you know, only the second county council in the history of the office since the office split off from the district attorney's office in 1987. So he's certainly got a place in history. I mean, he. As you all know, Mike contributed a great deal to the county in his career, and his I think his contributions were really immeasurable, frankly. In addition to him being a very talented lawyer, Mike was an equally talented person. I mean, a great sense of humor. He loved he worked hard, but he also knew how to enjoy life. He loved reading, he loved movies, he loved wine tasting, he loved travel, loved his family, just talked about his daughters, whenever he had an opportunity. And Mike will be very much missed. I've been talking to our county manager over the last couple of weeks about a way we might honor Mike, and John graciously agreed to come to the Board of Supervisors with an idea. And it would entail this. the idea would be that we would create a fellowship position in the office for a recent law school graduate. It'd be a 2-year position, kind of a what we call it social justice impact litigation, where a recent law grad can come to our office for a couple of years and get trained as a lawyer and also be exposed to the great work we do here at the county. John has authorized us to bring that to your board at the next board meeting. So I'd be very excited for that possibility to honor Mike, and it would be in Mike's name, be fellowship in Mike Murphy's name. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
And just to add one other point in Mike's storied career, he was a graduate of West Point, spent 5 years on active duty as a Army officer, and earned a Ranger Tab, which is a considerable achievement in the United States Army.
Okay. I will now adjourn to closed session. Thank you. Okay, we are reconvening after closed session. Mr. Byers, if you could report out,
Yes.
please.
Yes, thank you, President Pine. The board met in closed session to consider the 3 closed session items listed on the agenda, and there was no reportable final action taken.
Thank you. Now we'll adjourn this meeting.
Yes.